I say this with a unblemished record of heterosexuality. He looks good, and he looks hard.
Aaron, Prime, thanks.
It's just a grotesque postmodern psyop, and anyone who's fallen for this is brain damaged.
And Floating Head, resub, thank you.
Do you smell what Barack is cooking?
I say this with a unblemished record of heterosexuality. He looks good, and he looks hard.
And as always, the drink game rules. Racid Rep and Krevanax, thanks for tier 1. Ron DeSantis say the words foot fetishes? Nope. Pretty good, though. We can take a peek. Here at the old drink game rules. I'm gonna remove. They're also good though. I wanna remove something. We can remove the Ukraine rule, even though I feel like it'll probably get used quite a bit. And we're gonna say quote Hamas, end quote. Why do you have the sun in a bottle behind me? The lamp. I'll mention Ukraine only in the contracts of Israel. Yeah, probably. Which word of Hamas, Israel, and Palestine do we think it's used the most often? I guess today's a. I guess today can be a headset day. I think that Hamas gets used most often of those three. Pretty sad. I forgot that today was debate day, and I quickly drove to the local convenience store to pick up some seltzers. I bought these Vizzies. I've never had this particular brand of seltzer before, and I bought this one because it had Dallas Cowboys branding on it, and I thought it'd be funny to drink on the Cowboys pack after they lost to the Eagles on Sunday. But there's no branding on the cans, so the joke's ruined. It's only on the box. Not my favorite. I don't know. I'll have to... This is strawberry kiwi flavored. I'll have to wait to try some of the other flavors, but this one's not my favorite. They have a fourth debate. Wait, do they? I thought this was supposed to be the last one. Hi, sorry for bothering you. I want to offer a promotion of your channel's viewers, followers, views, chatbots, etc. The price is lower than any competitor. That's crazy. I think, alright. Ban. There we go. Anywho, we can do this.
We love you. You're very special.
Yeah, I thought that there was only supposed to be 3. Noctis EM and Luisma, thank you guys both for the resubs. Who are the top runners for the reps other than Trump and DeSantis? It doesn't matter. Everyone not named Donald Trump doesn't matter. We're watching this for fun. This will not impact the election. all of these guys are trying to strengthen their case for like 8, 12, 16 years from now. That's the angle for them to run right now.
It's just a grotesque postmodern psyop, and anyone who's fallen for this is brain damage.
Vivek Surge, yeah. Any of them trying to sell a book are in? I don't think so. Anyway, there's a 4th debate scheduled, yes. Yeah, I thought, am I correct in saying that there was originally only 3? Little Rhonda and Nikki are probably the only ones who make it. Just a 1v1. I haven't kept up with the polling at all for the Republican primary because it doesn't matter because Trump's going to win by 400 grillion points. Is Nikki Haley in 3rd behind Trump Rhonda?
We are back now with our countdown to the 3rd Republican debate, now just 30 minutes away. And you know that foreign affairs, specifically the Israel-Hamas war, is going to be a big focus tonight. With these candidates faced with the task of proving why they should be not just the commander-in-chief, but in essess the chief diplomat of the United States. I want to bring in NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons, who is joining us now live from Tel Aviv. Keir, let me start with this, the latest on the ground in Israel, and then I think we want to talk through what you're hearing as it relates to U.S. domestic policy overseas as well.
Is Hamas a drink? It is.
Yeah, sure. Well,
the rules are pinned.
US foreign policy and security is
foreign policy.
Right this debate is happening with so much in flux. Just take what we're hearing tonight, that the US has targeted Iranian targets inside Syria. The Secretary of Defense announcing that just in the past few hours. Meanwhile, news that Houthi rebels in Yemen have shot down an MQ-9 US drone in international airspace.
This is me doing a volume check.
And then the continuing
this is how I would talk
Israeli offensive
compared to how the debate
Gaza,
sounds, and also
we simply
the
do
music.
not know where that is
Volume
going.
check.
What we've seen is President Biden
Is everything at an
being
appropriate
lockstep with
volume
Prime
level?
Minister Netanyahu, but not clear really what the outcome will be, what the weeks and months ahead are.
Also, captions on or nah.
That US's
they will be delayed a bit,
around the world,
as is
and its security
live television.
Is locked into Israel's
Probably doesn't hurt to have them on. It's not like
it's
not like there's anything important on the screen, really.
Have traditionally been
and since on YouTube, I can move them.
Government. I think one of the questions tonight will be whether a Republican president would have done anything differently than President Biden, who has made himself, of course,
I can move them temporarily.
To Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israeli government.
You know, Keir, when we turn to the debate, all the candidates on the stage tonight have been outspoken in their support for Israel versus Hamas in that war. But
I was dead ass going to take a nap.
We need to stop
it was almost nap time.
Needs to be careful how it dabbles in foreign wars.
And then in like a
it could stand on its own.
Flash of
it doesn't need the U.S.'s help. What would Israelis say to that?
Like. It's like having a war flashback. It just all came rushing back to me.
Well, I think Israelis would say
that there was a
Ukrainians
debate
would say
today.
That same argument that he makes, they would say, okay, but
I
how are you going to
overpriced 12 fluid ounce gas station
if you walk away from the world will come to you if you don't face the security and foreign policy challenges around the world, be it Russia, be it Iran, be it the Houthis in Yemen, any of these
Start-a-slight, thanks for the Prime.
China, for example, even though the Biden administration is working to try and patch things up a little bit with China, I think many people will ask, okay, but what are you going to do about the fact that history shows that in years to come, if America isn't out there in the world pursuing its interests, it actually makes America more unsafe. I mean, I think that's one of the questions, and it is a massive debate, Tom. There is a real question in the U.S. right now about the extent to which America should be engaged in the world. It is, of course, we should say this, America is extraordinarily engaged in the world. There are U.S. bases around the world, so it is a question of whether or not you pull back from a position that is already pretty strident, but it is a very important debate, and I think we're going to see that play out in the next 12 months as we get closer to the general election.
Keir Simmons, part of our vast reporting team covering the Israel-Hamas war. Keir, we thank you. Please stay safe out there. And the candidates will be tasked tonight to answer questions about just this, how they as president would handle diplomatic relations while one of the U.S.'s greatest allies is at war. For more analysis, I want to bring in NBC News chief political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck, this is the first debate since the attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th. What are you looking to hear from the candidates tonight, and what will really make a difference with Republican voters? I keep going back to this sort of strategy from Vivek, and it's probably likely what he believes.
Okay.
He's even started a website, No Neocons, a phrase we haven't heard since the George W. administration.
The damn neocons.
Ideal, right? An old conservative ideal of letting America stay alone, not to get involved in foreign wars. But I got to think he's going to be on an island tonight during the stage of that policy.
Well, he'll be on an island, and
you guys see the
folks inside a
the infighting between Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene recently?
With Trump.
So funny.
Right? They already view Trump
They're at each other's throats.
That he is more, even though Trump's obviously more interventionist.
So wonderful. Just you really love to see it.
I do think those voters are not even to be had there on that front. But what I'm curious about I was really intrigued by Nikki Haley's speech to the Republican Jewish Coalition. She went right at Trump in that speech. So, I saw in the previous panel,
absolutely going to lose 24.
She was working for him in many ways.
I don't know. Maybe the Republican voter base will actually think that's really cool that she's trying to
represent,
get a little hand job in public,
policy. But I think she went after him in a way, saying,
maybe that actually boosts the ratings.
Be there when Israel really needs him there. It was an interesting strategy in front of those group of people. She sort of hugged him and say, look, it's great what he did with the embassy, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. But are you sure he's going to be there next time? And then made the case that he doesn't always keep his word. That was in front of that audience. So I'm curious to see tonight if she pivots, takes this question.
I was confused. I was like, what is
as
on my screen? But
it's to take on the former president directly.
It's the work.
Well, let me pull
computer.
on that thread a bit, Chuck, because this particular topic would be an opportunity for some of these candidates to go after former President Trump. As you know, Nikki Haley already has
clever name
to a
JPEG.
degree.
Thanks for the tier
Ron
1.
DeSantis has as well in this unique position now as the governor of a state that has one of the biggest Jewish populations in the country. He's been very active in that executive role since this war began. Both of them going after the former president for
my favorite,
very smart for criticizing
my favorite
the Prime Minister and the Israeli intelligence apparatus, right, as the war was
political
beginning,
talking point is
Caught a
if
lot
you're
of flack for that. I wonder how much you
anti-invasion,
expect that to play
then
in.
that means
Even
you're
as
racist.
The DeSantis super PAC and an ad put out by Nikki Haley backers, their super PAC, they're also going after each other.
Gotta be my top one.
Well, and that's what
anti-war
really
equals
tonight,
racist.
right? I know the two of them are trying to knock each other out, but if they, I'm sorry, if they waste their time going after each other on the air tonight, they've missed opportunities to differentiate themselves from the person they actually have to defeat, and that's Donald Trump. This is a real opportunity for Governor DeSantis too, because it isn't really clear how much depth he has in the foreign policy arena, but he has really leaned in on Israel,
who has the smallest hands
trying
in the
to do
GOP.
Anything within his official duties.
Maybe they'll talk about it on stage.
To show his support for Israel. And look, he certainly he served in the military. It's an opportunity there to remind folks
Trump
he's got some
wins
advertising that he's done that. So
the primary,
again, the choice of how do you
then literally
showcase yourself? Do you do
literally
it by
gets
contrasting
arrested,
yourself with someone
put
on the
in jail,
stage? Or
and
do
then
you do
Biden
it by
runs
going after Donald
unopposed
Trump?
and wins.
That's really I'm guessing the question. Each one of these candidates, at least the
it
first
would never
three,
happen,
DeSantis, Haley, and Scott, are going to ask themselves when answering every question today.
At 96, thanks for the 2.
It's a great point because we know that Governor DeSantis, his special guest tonight, are actually American Israelis that he flew out of Tel Aviv, I believe, to Florida, and they're going to be sitting in the debate hall in just about 20 minutes. Chuck, I do want to talk about time. If we go way back to 2016, which is
and he
one
still
of my
run
favorite
from jail.
exercises to
Ooh,
do.
we still vote on
At this
it.
point,
What
in
if he
2016,
wins?
a guy named
Then
Ben
what? Are you allowed to
Carson,
pardon yourself?
Remember, we both covered that campaign. Ben Carson was surging in Iowa, and he was actually ahead of Donald Trump in a poll. Right. So we talk about time, but in my conversations with the campaign, I'm sure you heard this too in all the campaigns, they were saying, listen,
let's see
it's
Trump
hard
wiggle out
to
of
get
this
out
one
there
before he
because you have
effortlessly
the Israeli
wiggles
war,
out of
the
it.
Ukraine war,
He's just such a wiggler.
Trump indictments. It's hard to break through. So my point being, this debate matters, Chuck. You have 2 months before Iowa. You have the holidays in between.
This debate matters. It's so important to know who wins.
Coming off this endorsement because time's running out.
Hey, look, for all three of the candidates we've been talking about, I mean, I think you guys have correctly categorized
when is the,
Chris Christie and Vivek
Ramaswamy.
They're
March?
running for different reasons. They're
When's
not
the primary?
running to win the nomination. But the first three are clearly running to try to win this nomination. And you're right.
When do they do that vote?
I mean, I think this could be it for Tim Scott. He's going to have trouble making hitting the
horrible is it
making
to listen to the stream and knowing little about the election?
You didn't get there
it's
easily
even better
this time for this debate. The next debate has
January.
a higher threshold, so he really needs a moment. I do think we're going to see a Tim Scott we haven't seen before.
I was in January.
Let's see what that looks like.
I was more so
Let's see
asking
when
we would know the
folks
results.
respond to it or not. And then you're right on Governor DeSantis. I mean, it's really been a downward slide. The slide has slowed a bit. But if it's not a commanding performance tonight, he may see more donors go to either Haley or Trump, depending on whether.
Think of all the money he'll lose. And without any money, there's no chance.
Chuck Todd, we're so glad to have you and your analysis here with us tonight as we are live from the Spin Room here in Miami. Chuck, thank you. Again, we are 21 minutes away now, so there is action happening in the hall. It's just a couple of hallways from where we're sitting. We're going to give you a better sense of that later on tonight.
So much action.
Not far from where we are. You saw the audience getting seated here. The moderators are about to get seated. We are getting closer and closer to this kicking off, and as you have heard, the stakes are high.
Oh, very high. Yeah, we're down to 5 candidates from 7 from the last debate. So much at stake. We're going to hear from the moderators, as you mentioned, as well as from the chair of the RNC. We're just about 20 minutes from the debate. Stay with us. This is a big night for politics, a big night on NBC News Now.
Is Burgum still there? I hope he is. He was my favorite guy. I want to see another pissing contest between Vivek and Burgum. Aw, Burgum got cut. So sad. You really hate to see it. Like whenever your favorite contestant that you obviously know isn't going to win the entire thing gets voted off the island in Survivor. They let Tim Scott on the stage despite not qualifying. They let him pass just to, you know, even things out. Like that extremely low resolution picture of Ivanka that they're using. Tim Scott's the +1. Mike Pence dropped out. He did. He went up there and he said, "It's not my time," as though like, oh, but later it will be. Jeb can still win. Why did Jeb not run? Abrupt cut.
So here we are now, just about 19 minutes away from the third Republican presidential debate. You'll watch it right here on NBC News Now and over on NBC News with those 5 candidates taking the stage. Everybody, Tom, you know this, looking for that breakout moment as they try to get some momentum here just a couple of months before the Iowa caucuses. The Republican field
why does Donald not show up
since last month's debate, with former Vice President Mike Pence dropping out? I want to bring in somebody who knows the former VP quite well, Mark Short, former chief of staff to Vice President.
Is that
Pence.
How Tim Scott got his spot?
So listen, Mark, we'll talk more about the Pence of it all in just a second. But let me ask you this, because this is something that Tom and I were talking about in the last segment here before we brought you on. Because all 3 of us sitting on this set right now lived through the 2016 campaign, where the dynamics were such that Donald Trump was leading in
Everyone
polls.
sitting here is at least 7 years old.
None of them made their play quickly enough, and Donald Trump got the Republican nomination. What do you see right now in the dynamics of this race that shows that the outcome could be any different?
Well, I think in that race in 2016, it was a lot closer. So there was a lot of candidates in the middle. And so, as you said before, Ben Carson jumped out. People still to this day think Donald Trump won Iowa, when in fact it was Ted Cruz who won Iowa. Yeah. People still forget that.
Oh,
so
God.
There is still a lot of play. And Iowans want you to know that you actually spend time in their state and actually look for their vote. But it is different this time because in a lot of polls, Donald Trump's above 50%, which is not where he were in 2016. And so I do think there's a harder element to break out right now.
We were just showing folks, by the way, a live look at the interior of the debate.
I've been doing physical therapy for the past month or so, chat.
Mark, you know the president
I've been having
well.
chronic
Who can
knee
stand
pain
toe-to-toe with him
like
if
all
he
year.
ever comes to a debate stage?
Anytime I do any
Candidates
amount of
that are
physical
out there right
exercise, my knee hurts for like
there are a lot of candidates
5
who can stand
days.
toe-to-toe with him on policy.
Physical therapy hasn't been working.
Where he enjoys
it really
the
hasn't improved at all.
entertainment of it, but if it's actually a true policy debate,
but regardless, Donald Trump got mentioned like in passing somehow. I don't remember the context. And my physical therapist, who was instructing me as to what exercises to perform, she said, "Don't you talk bad about my Trump now." And it was like something completely non-political or something, and I was just like,
the former vice president for these moments. What's going on right now?
Like, I was really hoping that I was about to get spun up, and I was going to be able to slam dunk on my physical therapist on politics.
So there wasn't so much the nerves, but it was when you've got 8 or 9 candidates, it's like, how do I get my moment? Because
did you see Mike Pence at CVS right before he dropped out? I did not.
Stage. As it's down to 5, people have a little bit more time, but that's still a challenge. It's still a challenge. It's not a one-on-one type debate.
A lot of the campaigns were telling me that they were excited about tonight because
who do you guys think
they felt the last 2
is going to be the Trump VP
they feel with
nominee?
With the stage a little smaller, less candidates on the stage.
Got to be somebody on the stage, right?
Does that happen? I mean, if you didn't do it the first 2 debates,
could it be Vivek? Does he get the VP?
I mean, you don't always know the moment. Like, actually, in the
Donald Jr. would be hilarious.
The perception was it was Nikki taking on Vivek, but it was
Pence would be even more hilarious.
Took the first shots, but because the visual was Nikki with Vivek next to each other, the perception was, oh, that was Nikki taking him on. So a lot of it matters about the staging and where you are actually up there too.
So then, what are you going to be looking for tonight? We've covered here on this build up to the main event, which is just 15
I think it's
minutes
more
away
likely
now.
that Barack
Sort of
Obama
closer
gets the VP
to some of the issues
nomination
that are
than
at play.
Mike Pence.
Abortion access, foreign policy is going to be a big one. We heard from Keir Simmons live in Tel Aviv. What are you watching for yourself? And I'm asking you to put on your political analyst hat here, unless you're,
Well, I think the reality is that DeSantis and Nikki
Get a woman to attempt to get extra
ahead of
votes.
the other three, and so I think the two of them will probably have the most contentious moments in this
Probably
debate.
not.
And I think they'll both be vying for that.
That was the John McCain play in
I think
2008.
you'll see Vivek as the outlier. If you want to take advantage of it.
Okay, Mark, just take a
It could be
break. We're
Nikki
gonna listen to
Haley.
the RNC chair right now who's starting to speak and address the
Link
debate.
1701. Thanks for the tier 1.
Particularly excited. In a county, Republicans flipped red for the first time in decades. We have made huge strides with Hispanic
I say
voters,
this with a
and we're going to
unblemished
continue
record of
to invest
heterosexuality.
so that we can earn more
He looks
votes,
good.
so we
And
can
he looks
take
hard.
back the White
And
House
96.
in
Tier 1. Thank you.
2024. There are some people
Tucker
I want to
Carlson.
thank, our RNC debate
That would be funny.
committee and our RNC members who are here today. Our debate
The
committee is
all-celebrity
headed by Dave
team.
Bossie and Anne Hathaway. Thank you for all that you've done. Our partners for this debate, NBC News, Rumble, Salem Radio, and for the very first time ever, a Jewish organization is part of a presidential debate as we partner with the Republican
Wow.
Jewish Coalition.
I can't believe Jewish people are finally important.
I also want to thank our RNC members
So thoughtful.
from right here in Florida, and also Mayor Frances Suarez, who is the great mayor of this city.
Make sure to take that one out of context.
Thank you for everything you've done. Before we begin, I do want to take a moment to recognize everyone with loved ones in Israel. Our Jewish friends here in the U.S. and across the world, we are praying for you, and we stand with you, and we stand with the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Finally, I want to ask all of you, on behalf of the millions of people who are watching at home, we are all excited. We're excited to beat Joe Biden.
That's where the
but
Jewish
we
people
really
are
want
from.
to hear the candidates. So if you can keep your applause to a minimum, and please make sure that we can hear every important
No hooting and
answer on
hollering,
this
please.
stage, that would be much appreciated. Now, let's get on with the show. Let's win back
I
the
really
White
don't want
House.
to get
God
super
bless
deep into the
you,
weeds
and God bless the United
about
States of
Israel
America.
Palestine because it's just exhausting. But just the notion that
Okay,
it's
the
like
Republican presidential debate set to
just
begin in
the
just minutes. The pre-show
Jewish
is now
religion as a
underway. You can tell
whole,
the audience is
it, like
pretty
as though
lively,
this
and the
country is
chairwoman there
representative of
setting
it
the
is
rules, making
so
sure people
beyond
don't cheer
stupid.
Too loud. How important is the crowd? Because I remember seeing debates, and we saw.
Like, is there
them in
any like?
2016,
Can you compare that to
2020. We saw
anything
an interview with
else
the
at
president
all?
where the crowd, the former
Like,
president,
period.
made a difference. How big of a factor is the
It's like
crowd?
if
I
we
think
were
it's
to
less
talk
so
about
because it's
like
predominantly donors
like
in the audience.
Shintoism
It's
or
a little bit
something,
different.
and saying that it's a religious war if anyone were to attack Japan, or, like I really can't
I mean, like, if you go back to the first debate in
think of
Milwaukee,
it's stupid. It's two separate things.
which I think generates a little bit different
One
energy.
of them is
it can be a factor, but I don't anticipate
government of a
it being as much
country, and the other one is a
Miami-Dade,
religion.
and in Miami, we like to have a good time, so it could be.
Having co-moderated a primary debate, there's always a lot of wild cards. You sort of wonder how it's going to go. We know that, and you heard the chairwoman address it there and nod to this moment that we've been talking about here, foreign policy hanging over
Been
this.
2
with the
months,
Israel-Hamas
TOO
war,
months.
nodding
I
to
want to think without your opinions.
Jewish coalition
I post them on
partners who are
Twitter.
now part of
Pretty
this
common.
debate, and the rest of the folks who are with us
The
here.
Church of England.
Yeah.
If
I
if
think the
anyone
real
were to
outlier on that
attack
particular
England,
issue is
if there was an
Vivek, and I
invasion
think he's
into
gonna relish
England,
that
nobody would
moment
claim
because
it
he's
as a
gonna- he'll look
religious
like different than the
war.
other four who will pretty much have the same
It's
position.
obviously apples to oranges
It is
because
not
it
a
has
consistent
been
view, I think,
basically
with where
a
the Republican Party has
religious
been,
war
Vivek holds, and, you know,
in the
Vivek's new to
region
this. He
for
didn't used to
I
even
don't
vote
know
in
how
presidential
long it's
elections till
been.
recently. So, but I think he'll probably look to try to take advantage of that moment.
Mark Short, we appreciate your analysis. If I see you hooting or holdering, we're going to take you out. Okay,
Well,
so
it's-
make sure to
it's
watch
not-
we're going to take a very quick
like,
break. We'll
it's
be
still
right back with
imperialistic
our special
in its
coverage
endeavor.
Here from Miami at the Republican presidential debate. Stay with us.
Wonder if they'll get their ass handed to them in elections yesterday. I just think it's really dumb. It's like, and also it's particularly funny because the side that we're defending in this is like they're the aggressor. The big fish is attacking the little fish, and we're saying, God bless the big fish. The big fish has been getting attacked by the little fish for so long.
Welcome back to our special coverage of the Republican presidential debate here in Miami, hosted by NBC News. You're watching it here on NBC News Now. You can see
cameraman. Whoa.
Just about 9 minutes away. The countdown truly is on, Tom. And we are seeing the crowd in their seats. At any minute, we're going to see the candidates walk out on stage because this thing starts at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And we cannot forget our colleagues, the moderators here, right? Lester Holt, anchor of Nightly News, Kristen Welker, the moderator of Meet the Press, and Hugh Hewitt, radio host as well, conservative radio host as well. I understand we have Dasha Burns. She's been working the aisles, if you will, Phil Donahue style. Before
if you only viewed the last month of history, Hamas attacked first.
In the spin room. Where are you? I'm looking for you there. There you are. What have the people you've been talking to, the GOP donors, the voters,
we're having fun out here. All right.
The teams for the campaign. What are they saying about this debate, and what are they looking for?
Well, look, this is a critical night, and it's no secret when you talk to the campaigns of these candidates. The last couple of debates, she has like
a radio mic.
You talked about the participation of the crowd. They thought that was a little bit too much, a little too riotous. They weren't necessarily happy. I know the DeSantis campaign last time felt like he was standing on the stage too long.
Yeah, with another gifter. Thank you.
So they are looking forward to a slightly different style of debate with our moderators tonight, and they are looking to distinguish themselves. This is game time now. We're about 2 months out from the first in the nation caucuses. DeSantis tonight. This is Florida, right?
Rhonda.
This is his state, and a state that former President Trump also lays claim to. He's counter-programming tonight, so he's got to
every time. It's so funny that
take on Trump a little bit more directly this time. That's really
Trump
what I'm
has ran
how far is
his own presser every single time there's a debate.
He's kind of ratcheted up the
literally just trying to steal views.
And then I'm looking at Nikki Haley. How is she going to ride that momentum? So a lot at stake tonight, and the donors, the activists, the folks that are here rooting on their candidates, they're excited.
What's the current number that we're running for Trump's valuation of Mar-a-Lago?
These candidates differentiate themselves because at this point,
is it like the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet yet, or not?
To be nominated, they want to see consolidation. They want to see one candidate step out into the alternative role here, and they want to see this become a two-person race. Could this debate help get us there?
No. No,
Dasha
no,
Burns,
that's not going to
just
happen.
behind us here in the spin room. It's going to look a lot different in just about 2 hours from now. It's going to be packed with reporters, with campaign staffers. Yeah. Tom, you've worked a spin room. I think everybody here on this set has worked a spin room. It's going to get bananas.
I think I got some Hallie Jackson elbows in the spin room once.
Probably,
right?
You know,
spin room.
We've got lots more to come here tonight. You're going to see all of it after the debate. But let me bring back in our panel now with Tom and I. Carlos Curbelo, Hogan Gidley, Noel Nakpour. Hogan, let me start with you here because the point that Dasha is making, the idea that
11 ounces of Red Bull in the past 15 minutes
in the Republican primary electorate here.
Sure.
To a degree, some people say they could
I don't think it's impossible that we see a second Trump term.
But you know who doesn't say that?
At the current juncture, I would call it very unlikely.
Loyal, they are intensely vocal. They have said time and time again to pollsters that they don't want to be swayed.
Even if he was president, can they still call President Trump?
Well, first,
everyone always says this, and yes.
Presidential candidates and done a lot of presidential debates.
Whenever you retire from being a doctor, people still call you doctor, even if you're not actively.
Look,
if you're not actively in the profession,
for people to do certain things that bring voters to their side. But debates are really about
people say President Reagan,
taking that moment,
President Nixon,
momentum, and then ultimately
President Bush.
A movement. It is very difficult to do that when Donald Trump has such a stranglehold on.
I'm not excited for another 4 years of a fucking Biden dude.
Primary field right now, the people that want to get out there and vote for him. I'm going to find it interesting tonight to see.
Obviously, it's okay to be critical of your government, but for a lot of people, I feel like what would they be happy with?
Carlos, you're a Republican.
Biden's definitely not my first option,
you were never a
but he's far from my last.
Very clear. He made that very clear. I do want to ask you. There may be a lot of people like you in the Republican Party.
I mean, I think so far it's been fine.
Our front runner is indicted.
I don't
He's
like
facing 90
the
criminal charges. He's being accused,
the war
and some of his
hawkish
own lawyers
we
are
love
pleading
Israel
guilty
take.
to
It's
stealing
probably
an
my least
election.
favorite.
So I have to ask you,
my least favorite
at some point,
Bidenism
does that have to be a major part
from his
of this
presidency.
debate, or is that impossible to have that conversation and win this nomination?
I think
which
every candidate
which
has to
which
go on
person
the record
would step in
with
there
how they
and
feel
not do
about
that?
Donald Trump's conduct over the last 4 years. You just can't escape that.
At that
And
point,
I
you can just
know
say bad
that our
country,
good
and
friends Lester
yeah,
Holt and
that's
Kristen Welker
cool.
will hold their feet to the fire. I think this is going to be a wonderfully moderated debate. But yes, they do have to
I want to put an
confront,
age cap
as
on
they
it.
say, the elephant that's not in the room tonight, and state where they are so that the American people know and so that the voters
And
know.
Carlos, we want to interrupt you and Hallie here. This is our first look at the candidates, the way they're going to stand in that position.
Well,
behind
what
the podiums
arbitrary
they just
number
entered
is the
debate
correct
hall.
To a
one?
big cheer, it sounded like from the crowd who was gathered just a couple of rooms over from where
I
we're
think that
sitting
the
right
president
now.
should be
And listen,
between
this is one of those
35 and
moments
38
here.
years old.
They're walking out.
That
We are 4
I think
minutes
that
now
should
from the beginning of
be
this
the
debate.
selection
a lot
that
of
we're
pressure on
choosing
each
from.
of their shoulders for a variety of different reasons. So far, listen, some of this is about the optics, the smiles, the waves.
Yeah.
They're shoulder to shoulder. They're walking over to the corner of the stage together as they go back to take their podiums.
And Noel, I think we've spoken about this before. In the first debate, everyone dressed
75?
like Donald Trump.
Why?
Do you remember that? Everyone
All
had the
red
name,
tie.
the name
Why
of the
75?
suit, the red tie. Here we have a little bit of variety here.
Why not 70?
Noel, you know, you work
Why
a
not
lot with
65?
donors. You need money to run campaigns. If you're out there in the crowd right now, what's the one thing you hope happens if there's a candidate you're vying for?
Well, one of the things that that you want to hear is fixing problems, solutions to problems. And I'll tell you
I think
something else
that
I'll
the
be
age
looking
limit
after
for
the
a
debate
president
is the momentum donor, and that's the small donor, because the momentum
should be
donor
decided by
is a
the voters.
movement. That is a voter.
And if they think
Because
they're
for
too old, then
someone,
they can vote for
Obama
somebody
captured
else.
that. For someone to give $20, they're
In
going to
Congress,
vote because they don't really
it's a different
probably have that
territory,
$20 compared to the bundlers that are giving $100,000.
And I don't think it should be an age limit. It should probably be like a
looking for
term
that
limit
momentum.
because the incumbents
Well, the other
win
piece of this too,
way
I mean, listen,
too
and I've
often.
heard, Noel, it's interesting. I've heard from donors too who
It's
say, yeah,
really hard for
there is a
incumbents
lot
to
on the line
lose.
here for the people who are looking for that.
But that problem
anti-Trump
could be
candidate.
tackled
Is it going to be Ron
in-
DeSantis?
by-
Is it going to be Nikki Haley?
with
Looking
other
to tonight.
methods.
The other piece of this, we haven't touched on it much, but it is the biggest thing that drives voters to the polls, and that is the economy. That is the plan that these Republicans have to help people feel better about their money.
Yeah, Hallie, and especially with the Republicans.
I'm going to run ads before the debate begins so that way they don't run in the middle of it.
Gets people excited. Everyone's feeling
You don't
it,
like
but
the
also
ads?
immigration,
Cry about
which
it.
every
Or subscribe. Those are your two
Republican
options.
primary voter cares
Okay.
about in Israel, an issue that is especially important to Christian evangelicals. These are issues that these candidates are going to use tonight to try to get those voters
Christian
amped up and get
evangelicals.
some contributions into
And-
their campaign.
Jose, explain one thing to me. We're running out of time here. They did
Being
a
supportive
super
of
active series
Jewish
of
people
ads
really goes
focusing on
hand in
Trump
hand.
Indictments. It actually empowered them. They felt they actually didn't run the ads because it was going to be counter. It backfired.
Rags with a
Explain
primer,
to
thank
me
you.
on the
I can
Republican
have
side
gaming.
how that works.
Primer also,
It's not
thank you.
just about Donald Trump. So many out there in this country, if you like the wrong tweet, if you download the wrong podcast, if you attend the
Communism
wrong
is
speech,
based.
And
you're
Consumer
targeted
Shadow
by
primer.
this government in some way. Your
three-piece.
political positions are now being exploited by the three-letter agencies, by the federal government. If you're for life,
The three-letter
they're arresting you.
agencies.
If you're worried about your daughter being raped in a school in Virginia, you're the one who's arrested, not the other person. It's that kind of mentality, and Donald Trump happens to be the tip of the spear, and he's got the bullet bill to be that voice for the American people. It's the same thing he did in 2016, where he said, I'm the voice for the voiceless. This is just another issue where he can say, look, they're coming after me. They're coming after you. This has to stop. Elect me, and I can prevent this from happening.
You are seeing that countdown clock in the bottom of your screen right now. We're less than a minute away.
Hogan, Noel, Carlos, we thank you so much. It is about to begin. This has been NBC News' special coverage of the countdown to the third presidential
I
debate.
like how everyone's so
The second
gung-ho
this
about
thing
it.
is
Like,
over, Tom
wow,
and
this
I
is
are
going to be
gonna
really
back
fun,
for the
guys.
Post-debate show here in the spin room, talking with candidates live, breaking down all the big moments.
We're going to look forward to that. But first, the presidential debate moderated
I don't
by
Rumble
Lester
anymore.
Holt,
That
Kristen
was a
Welker,
Fox
and
News thing.
Hugh
This one
Hewitt.
is
It is
NBC, as
about
you can
to
see.
start 20 seconds away. Hallie's going to be here.
I run
I'm
to the
gonna be
fridge
here.
and
The
grab
debate
another
hall is full.
beer
This is
real
NBC News
fast.
now. It's going to be running all across our platforms. We look forward
Best
to
you've ever
every single
seen.
moment. We thank you for watching.
Tonight, a critical test in the race for the White House. 5 Republicans battling to become their party's 2024 presidential nominee. The candidates ready to make their case on why they're prepared to be commander-in-chief amid two wars.
My grandpa's in there watching Gunsmoke, and he said, "Damn, boy, you're Russian."
And how they can unite a deeply divided electorate. Who is best to take on President Biden? And can any of them first beat former President Trump, who's far ahead in the polls?
Spoiler, they can't.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Rhonda.
Haley. Entrepreneur Vivek
Entrepreneur.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. And South Carolina Senator Tim
No
Scott.
Burgum. You really hate to see it.
NBC News, the Republican presidential debate. Live from the Adrian Arst Center in Miami, Florida.
I can't wait to see what Mike Pence has to add. I have bad news for you. Pence dropped out earlier this week. He said, "It's not my time."
Welcome to the Republican presidential debate. I'm Lester Holt, anchor of NBC Nightly News.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Welker, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press.
Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt, host of Salem Radio's The Hugh Hewitt Show. We are now just 68 days from the Iowa caucuses.
Vivek is a
when
rhino.
Republican primary voters will begin to determine their party's
He
nominee
seems
for
pretty
president.
Republican.
Tonight, we'll question 5 candidates seeking
I don't know if
that
I'd call him a
nomination
rhino.
and how they're best prepared to be commander-in-chief. And, of course, how best to bring down prices impacting Americans across
It's
the
just
country.
a grotesque
We have 2
postmodern
hours
psyop,
for
and
a
anyone who's fallen
serious
for this is
debate
brain
on the
damage.
issues that matter
Oh, yeah.
most to Republican voters. Candidates will have 1 minute
Rampart,
and
thanks
30
for the tier
seconds
1.
for answers and the opportunity for a closing statement. Follow-ups will be at the discretion of all of us at the table, the moderators. Invoking a candidate's name or policy does not necessarily mean the mentioned candidate is entitled to a response. We want to caution all the candidates not to interrupt or speak over your fellow debaters. If you talk
Communism
over each
is
other,
based-
the voters can't hear you.
What is tier 1?
And given the
Thank you.
critical issues we're facing specifically on the world stage,
There-
we
there's
want
Chris.
everyone to hear every
Hope
word
Chris
you
and
have to
Vivek
say.
get into another pissing
Continued
contest.
interruptions may result in loss of additional questions. And to our audience, please hold your applause.
They're not gonna
so
do that.
The candidates can be heard.
I can tell you right now, they're not
With
going to do that.
said, let's have a good debate. All right, our first question, the opening question, is one for all of you. Donald Trump is the first ex-president in more than 100 years to run for the White House again. And he remains popular among Republican primary voters
Run it
as
back.
his legal challenges mount. Governor DeSantis, let me begin with you on this one. Speak to Republican voters who are supporting Donald Trump. Why should you and not him be
Remember
the
the last time
Republican
Ron DeSantis
nominee
didn't get to talk
face
for like
Joe
half an
Biden
hour?
a year from now?
This country is in trouble, and the elites that have put us here,
Pull
they
the
don't
string,
care about
say the
you.
line.
They don't care that you're having to grapple with higher grocery prices or have higher gas prices. They don't care that your family's less secure because of the open border that's allowed drugs and even terrorists to come into this country. Well, I care. I am not going to sit idly by and let this country continue its downward spiral. We need leadership, and we need it now. I'll take the hits, I'll take the arrows, I'll take the slings, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about you. I will fight for you. I will make sure to lead this country's revival, and I will win for you and your family. Actions speak louder than words. We don't have time for excuses, and it's not something that we're going to be able to have all these distractions. As a veteran, I will get the job done. Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than where we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain
The very real,
why he
complete
racked up
border
so
wall.
much debt. He should explain why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee, next November, I'll get the job done. And as president, I will deliver
Your time
for
is
you.
up. Let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Audience, let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Why you and not the former president?
Well, I think you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. 60% of
Big
Americans
number, bad
are living
number.
paycheck to paycheck. 50% of
Dude,
American
the debt's
families
made up.
can't afford diapers.
Who's gonna make us pay
1 in
it?
6 American families can't pay their utility
Come and take it,
bills.
brother.
You have
Oh no. We can't even blame Rumble this time. This is on YouTube. Eh? Can I do a eh?
1 in 6 American families can't pay their utility bills. You have the fact that he used to be right on Ukraine and foreign issues. Now he's getting weak in the knees and trying to be friendly again. I think that we've got to go back to the fact that we can't live in the past. We can't live in other headlines. We've got to start focusing on what's going to make America strong and proud. And that's what I'm focused on doing. Let's make sure we pay down our debt. I think we need an accountant in the White House. Let's make sure that we have transparency in the classroom. As a mom,
An
I know
accountant.
what that means. Let's make sure we secure our borders so that
Accountant,
our
how do I
families
do
are
economy?
safe. Let's get crime
34
down
trillion in
because
debt.
our families
What
wanna
do
know
I
that
do?
They can be safe no matter where they go. And as the wife of a combat veteran, I will tell you, a military needs to know we have our back, and we need to make sure that America is strong.
Ambassador, thank you very much. And,
She knows what it's like. She's a military spouse.
let me just caution the audience.
That's like the next best
let's not go
thing.
down this road. We've asked you to please, keep restraining yourselves, and it would be helpful so we can hear the candidates, because these are important issues and the voters want and need to hear them. Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please make your case. Why should you be the nominee and not the former president?
Give it to me,
I think there's something
Vivek.
deeper going on in the
Say
Republican
something
Party
crazy.
here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It's a cancer in the Republican establishment.
Losers.
Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party.
Resign, loser.
This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, we've got Kristen Welker here.
Okay.
You think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media,
Joe Rogan on here?
Media establishment. Ask you the
Thought I did.
Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years.
Okay.
Was that real, or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Ross.
Sorry. This is how we get our country back. We need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is
up.
up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to Governor Christie. Why you, audience?
Let me refresh on the drinking rules.
Let's not do this. Let's let the candidates
Hunter Biden.
speak. Governor Christie, why
Direct
you
insult.
and not former President Trump?
Elon Musk.
Well, Lester, look, you said it at the beginning of the debate.
Let's go, Chris.
We are dealing with extraordinarily important issues facing this country right now. We have our greatest ally in the Middle East under fire from a terrorist group that has committed to wiping them and every Jewish person in this world off the map. We have Ukraine with Vladimir Putin, a communist KGB dictator who wants to put the old band back together. He's starting in Ukraine, and he's going to move to the Baltics and Poland after that. We have
he's going to conquer all of Europe if we don't get in there.
Every American family that wants to try to rise up and give their children a better life. And tonight, we need to decide which president is going to be the one to tackle the big issues, who's going to make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world and say America is the country, the indispensable nation that makes this a safer world. And in a safer world, American innovation, American hard work has always been the thing that has driven our country to greater things. I'm going to be the president who will do those big things. We're not going to be small, and I'll say this about Donald Trump. Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country, and it needs to be said plainly.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you've said former President Trump can't win. Make your case to Republican voters.
Well, certainly. What I would say without any question is that the truth of my
Thank you
life
for inviting me.
destroys the lies of the radical.
Shout out Mike Pence dropping out. I wouldn't be here otherwise.
A candidate who will actually help our base solidify and attract independent voters into our party. The Great Opportunity Party is now winning back African-American voters and Hispanic voters because we are working on a foundation based on faith. Our nation is facing some deep challenges.
Christianity mentioned. Let's go. That's a sip.
In this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values.
Okay, directly mentioned. That's another sip.
Once again, become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house divided, that was Mark. Our founding documents speak to the importance of a faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to work for you, but America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation. I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future. Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies matter. We have to get back to being a nation that is, in fact, the city on the hill, that believes in each other enough for us to fight for that future.
Senator Scott, thank you. We're going to turn now to the challenges facing the next commander-in-chief. You'll all be fielding questions first from me and the Republican Jewish Coalition, and then from Kristen and Hugh.
Did we hit this actually?
Forward, the Israel-Hamas war is barely a month old. Tonight, Israeli troops are fighting inside Gaza City with over 200 hostages who remain captive there, and civilian casualties mount inside Gaza. As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi,
I don't know what the ABV on this
the job
is. It feels
once and for all
pretty light on the
with
alcohol.
These butchers, Hamas. They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe if they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. That Hamas should release
I don't like this one either.
hostage,
This is pineapple
and they
mango
should
busy.
surrender. I'm sick of hearing the media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for
Hamas is a
defending
sip.
itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious.
I launched a missile at Palestine from Florida.
He left them stranded.
As governor.
They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida. I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety. There could have been more hostages had we not acted. And I'll tell you this.
The little fish was just going on a rampage.
When they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter, and she said, my daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida. So there's a difference between words and deeds. We acted, and we saved lives.
Thank you.
Being a sanctuary is cool whenever we like them. Whenever they're our guys.
Humanitarian pause, for example.
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them. And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations. And we have to remember
fucking Mortal Kombat president is who I need.
Hamas, 2, support Israel with whatever they need, whenever they need it. And 3, make sure we bring our hostages home. We need to be very clear-eyed to know there would be no Hamas without Iran. There would be no Hezbollah without Iran. There would not be the Houthis without Iran. And there wouldn't be the Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq that are trying to hit our military men and women if it hadn't been for Iran. And who is funding Iran right now? China is buying oil from Iran. Russia is getting drones and missiles from Iran. And there is an unholy alliance. We need to be clear-eyed.
And then a couple
the last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. They are the tip of the spear when it comes to this Islamic terrorism.
The tip of the spear. I love that.
In that process.
All right. Thank you.
I love that phrase.
Mr. Ramaswamy, any daylight between you and the candidates we just heard on this issue, on what you would tell the Prime Minister?
Not in terms of what I would tell the Prime Minister, no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves. So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as President of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border. That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility. That's how we move forward. But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions.
There are terrorists pouring over from Mexico.
Fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy.
That's good. He's always good for some juicy
That's
material.
Why we're sending $200 billion
Holy
back to
shit.
that same country. The fact
terrorists,
of the Republican Party is not that much
they're
better.
terrorists
They're the likes
on
of
our
Nikki
southern
Haley, who
border.
stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt is
They're not sending their best, folks. They're literally terrorists.
the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a multimillionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a different generation who's going to put this country first, or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right,
In
Mr.
which case we've got two
that sounds pretty. I mean,
Senator Scott,
can we get like some AI art of that?
You're the president. You're on the phone in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister. You tell him what?
Well, number one, I would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu not only do you have the
what's
responsibility
Mr. Cheney up to
wipe Hamas off of the map. We will support you. We will be there with you. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder. There will be no daylight. But I would change the station a little bit, though, and head back home to America. I would say to President Biden, diplomacy only is a weak strategy. Appeasement leads to war. From President Obama to President Biden, Obama sent millions to Iran. Frankly, President Biden has sent billions to Iran. That is why I've said
and we need to do one, but we need to send trillions.
And President Biden, I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike.
We're still at war.
If you want to make a difference, you cannot just continue.
We're getting bombed left and right in Iran, that place that we should be in.
You actually have to cut off the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is Iran, and not simply their proxies.
So should we?
For us to have a
should we go to war?
Response from America, we have to be in a position of strength. As President of the United States, my foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to.
Let's go back. We gotta go back. We just come on, just fucking run it back, man. We just
these problems are
this
so
time
big
for sure.
That the first thing I would say to
we'll get him this time.
Simple. America is here.
Let's go
no matter
back to the
what it is
same
you need
box.
at any time to preserve the state of Israel. Remember that Hamas's main goal is to get rid of Israel.
Hamas
is to get Israel absolutely off the map. Now, there are three things I think I would say to him when he asked for advice. The first I would say is that it is absolutely your
Desert Storm 2. What do you mean? We already did Desert Storm 2.
Of Israel. Secondly, to make sure you protect the security and the safety of your people. Every time something happens to compromise either one of those
Actually,
things,
depending on how you phrase it, that could have been Desert Storm 3.
Region. Second,
because it was
you
Desert
must
Storm
go
and
in
Desert
make sure that
Shield,
Hamas
so
can never do this again. The fact is that Israel and their intelligence community failed. They failed here, and they failed the people of the state of Israel. And so we need to work closely.
I forgot
and
my
better
wallet
to
in
make
the Middle
sure,
East.
One, that they're degraded, and two, that we know everything that's going on inside the Gaza Strip when it's going on, so that something like this can't happen to kill 1,400 individuals again. And the third thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Make sure that we continue to isolate Iran, work with the reasonable nations in the Middle East, the other Arab nations.
How is Iran? What is this?
Continue to isolate Iran so that their only friends in the world.
I feel like we've been using this in the playbook for like 40 years.
Governor Christie, thank you very much. And we're going to continue in this.
Iran has nukes this time for real.
the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate. Here it is.
Whoosh.
Given attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups on U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq, attacks that have wounded approximately 24 of our U.S. servicemen, do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
That's a lot of military men.
Would you please answer that?
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is,
cameraman, zoom in on her feet.
Statement there for ammunition. What we need to be doing for Iraq and Syria is, first of all, the idea that our men and women could be targeted and that we've allowed almost 100 hits to happen under Biden's watch is unthinkable. We need to understand this is Iran giving the green light, telling them what to do, and we shouldn't be doing the tit for tat like what Joe Biden has done. We need to go and take out the infrastructure that they are using to make those strikes with, so they can
hit the electrical grid.
Again.
Let's go.
Iran responds to strength. You punch them one and you punch them hard, and they will back off. But what we don't need is Biden falling all over himself to get back in the Iran deal. Him giving $6 billion to get 5 hostages home. Him telling Netanyahu now that he needs a pause or a ceasefire. We don't need him going and sitting there tiptoeing around Iran because he thinks
we just got to go in. Hit him fast and hard. Just get in, fucking blow up all the infrastructure, get out.
When you do that, that's when the world pays attention.
The playbook's already been written.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, if I can continue with you. Just today, the U.S. launched another one of its limited
HW started it. W continued it. By God, I think we need Jeb to finish it.
Militarily to hold Iran accountable.
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times. I actually served in Iraq back in the day, and we had al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as Commander-in-Chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has.
But I will do it.
They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians. I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world. We have to be strong, and we have to defend the people who defend us.
All right, thank you, Governor. Now our second and final.
Don't put them in harm's way.
Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition, please watch.
Jewish students across the country are threatened and under attack.
Okay.
What do you say to
there was the fucking war drums segment about invading Iran, I guess.
And what do you say to university presidents and college presidents who have not met the moral clarity moment to forcefully condemn Hamas terrorism?
Mr. Ramaswamy, would you like to take
forcefully condemn?
Absolutely. I think the scourge of anti-Semitism across this country, including at places like my alma maters and places like Brooklyn Bridge in New York, it's sad to see, but here's what history teaches us. Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost, and we are lost. Several years ago when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America. Death to white people, death to Christians. Nobody was waking up back then. Now it's even bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really important that we do this through leadership, not censorship.
Why did they show that?
Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning. Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They are fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship, telling student groups to disband, mark my words, soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're a bioterrorist.
Yeah, we do.
Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates a worse underbelly We quell it.
I'm going to round that off at like 5
calling it out.
wokes. I wasn't counting. I should have been.
Administrators have lost their way, and we need leadership at the top in the United States of America that restores our founding values and that has no place.
Is that defending
for this kind of
J6ers? Uh-oh, it
anti-Semitic
is.
hate. That's where I stand while respecting our
Your
Constitution.
time is out. Senator Scott, let me
Oh man, we are hitting way more of the drinking game rules this time than we were in the than we have in the past.
Let me just say to every single university president in America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one. Number two.
I'm almost through my second beer.
Student who've come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right. Number three, any campus that allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide,
mass murder,
you should lose your federal funding today.
Get them out of here.
To all the students on visas who are encouraging Jewish genocide, I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not.
I was going to say, isn't that protected by the Constitution? But I suppose they don't have constitutional rights if they're here visiting.
Hide on our streets in New York, a Jewish citizen has the right to walk on the streets of America with no fear. They have the right to go to college campuses, go to class, and not fear. We will restore that. I started working on anti-Semitism on college campuses in 2017, because even then there was a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We must force the people off those campuses and
Senator
frankly,
Scott, thank you. Let me
out of our country.
Let me turn to the Governor DeSantis here. What do you think
Said,
about what he just said?
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked. Second, I have friends here in Florida who their kids do not feel safe even going
What if we
to
just rounded them up and like
at all outside of the state
put them
of
on their
Florida.
own special
You have Jewish
campus,
students
you know,
fleeing
like
for their lives
they're
at
pro-Hamas
Cooper Union.
campus.
Joe Biden should have the Department of Justice on these college
What?
campuses and holding the universities accountable
And they weren't allowed to
for
leave.
civil rights violations. When you should not have money going to these places. I already acted in Florida. We had a group, Students for Justice of Palestine. They said they are common cause with Hamas. They said, we're not just in
So they
solidarity.
can
This is what we
concentrate
are.
on their work.
We deactivated them. We're not going to use state tax dollars to fund jihad. No way. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish students who are being persecuted, he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia. No, it's
So-called.
anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control. That is what we have to confront. And as president, I can tell you this: we are not going to stand for this on college campuses any longer.
All right, Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Governor.
I think we
Governor
need
Christie,
to
considering
just
what he
abolish
said, we live in a
college,
state with
I
the
think is the
sizable
answer here.
Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord.
It's just
His
a
mother was
grotesque
also
postmodern
stabbed more than
psyop,
a
and
dozen
anyone who's
times
fallen for this
in
is
what has
brain
been
damage.
charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also
probably thinks
feeling
it's a crime.
afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over that
Okay.
job after the September 11th attacks, I had to deal with
Crazy
a
first day at the
situation
office,
in the
huh?
state that was explosive. We're the most ethnically diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent federal agents to those synagogues and we protected them, and the same thing should be being done now. At the very same time,
Was explosive the
personally
right
went
adjective
from
there,
mosque
Chris?
to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across the state of New Jersey, and we stopped any hate crimes that were going on
either against
Done.
Jewish Americans
We
in New
eliminated
Jersey
hate
or Muslim
crimes.
Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides.
There was
Both
a no
sides need to
racism
know
in
it,
New
but let
Jersey
us
under my
never
watch.
have a false moral equivalence between Hamas
Famously
and
not
Hezbollah
racist state.
and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley,
Yep.
what do you say to Americans who are simply afraid right now in this current environment that we're talking about?
I think, you look at the country, and the country is all out of sorts. I think, look at what these kids are dealing with
it's
on
not a
college
beer.
campuses. What makes me so
They not
angry is
cut to commercial on
not only
NBC
do you
like
have
they do
the
on
kids
Fox?
barricaded in the library. They've said they were going to shoot up the kosher dining hall. You've got kids' dorm rooms who are being set on fire because they have something related to Israel on their doors. No person should ever feel in danger like this. And this is what I would say about our college presidents, is if the KKK were doing this, every college president would be up in arms. This is no
Half of them are in the
different. You should
KKK.
treat it exactly the same. Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism, and we've got to make sure they're protected. And for everybody that's protesting on these college campuses in favor of Hamas, let me remind you something. Hamas said death to Israel and death to America. They hate and would kill you too. And the idea that they're talking about genocide for the Jewish people, that's not the values of America. That's not us. We're better than that. We don't need to celebrate terrorists. We don't need to celebrate genocide. We don't need to celebrate violence towards anybody. We need to go back and
But we do need to
soul-search in
invade
our country
Iran.
and remember what we are about. And we are about taking care of people, not going and making them
But it'll be
live
like
in fear
chill.
because
Like, well,
some
it'll be
other
cool.
terrorist activity says they want to destroy them.
Ambassador, thank you. Kristen.
Lester, thank you. This is another question for the entire field, so you will all get a chance to respond. But Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you. The United States has given Ukraine financial and military support since the war began more than 600 days ago. President Zelensky told me on Sunday, if Russia isn't stopped now, quote, the price will be higher for the United States.
Yeah, it's pretty.
And Americans
I think it's pretty
would be
crazy.
forced to,
The
quote, send your
Ukraine-Russia conflict is still going.
Senator Scott,
Been
where
like
do you stand
close,
on more
like
funding for
a,
Ukraine?
what, a year and
certainly
7
have been
months or
very
something?
supportive of Ukraine. I believe that ultimately we should make sure that the President of the United States
been a long
states
time.
what is America's national vital interest in Ukraine. It is actually in degrading the Russian military. We've been very effective using our resources and our weaponry and the incredibly high price of Ukrainian blood to achieve that objective. Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news. But the American people are frustrated that they do not have a president who reminds us and tells us, where's the accountability? Where are those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? We need those answers.
Where's the accountability?
For us to continue to see the
We need
support
results,
for
damn it.
Ukraine. At the same time, I would
Why
say
has Putin
that a
not been
package,
executed?
a package that's been offered by the president for Ukraine and Israel, that's the wrong approach. We need to focus specifically on providing Israel with the $14 billion that they need so that we show the world that we are 100% undeniably standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And then as we turn away from that direct support for Israel,
You guys see the
we
UN
should
vote
go
to like
our southern border
ceasefire
and
in
close our southern
Gaza,
border with the resources necessary. I believe that we have
and how
sleeper
the United
terrorist
States was
cells
extremely in the
America.
minority when they're like,
Thousands of
we
people
probably
have come from
shouldn't.
Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Iraq.
I think it was like
If we're going to
130
deal with the
to
national
20
security
or something,
emergency
and the
at
U.S. and
our
Israel
border,
were a
we
part of that
have to
20.
do it now.
Senator Scott, thank you. But just to be very clear, if you were president, if you were in the Oval Office today, would you sign off on more military funding for Ukraine, or would you discontinue it?
Bottom line is we have to first have the level of accountability
Who to
that allows the
185? I
American
don't
people
think that's
to
right.
understand where the resources have gone. Number one. Number two, after we have that responsibility taken care of and accountability,
You
then
voted
we
for
have
the
an
23rd
opportunity
year in a
to
row
look
to
at
end
the
the
overall
Cuba blockade,
strategy
and we're like,
that helps
yeah,
us degrade
you're
the
a
Russian military
communist.
while we use our resources and
Yeah.
frankly,
Communism's
keeping
bad.
our NATO partners safe from the Russian military is absolutely essential. As you understand, Article 5 would require to support and to defend NATO, our troops on the ground. The fastest way for us to eliminate that possibility is for us to destroy to the extent possible the Russian military. By doing so, we actually achieve the objective of keeping our military home. And that's good news.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent new plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded. And I'm actually enjoying watching
I don't care.
Ukraine Hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first
The
time for this
Ukraine
race, I was the only
Hawks?
person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly
They're defending.
coming around to
What?
be more cautious as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It has consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party.
Ukraine's no darling, but I don't think the imperialism is good either.
Occupied by Russia right now in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk. These are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine.
I can't believe we're whatabouting the people defending themselves from the imperialistic invasion.
And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer.
Ukraine hawks. That's so funny.
Money to fund the banning of Christians. That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time at least condemn.
Thank you. That's time.
At least to condemn their banning of Christians.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy,
Source, I made it up, by the way.
What is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see
The fact of the matter is she doesn't answer
So this is what I will tell you.
We're driving Russia into China's hands because of
We're driving Russia into China's hands.
Thank you. The first thing I'll tell you
What
is
if they fused?
we all remember what that thug did.
What if they
when
became
he invaded Ukraine.
China?
We all know
That'd be really bad, right?
1 million people have died because of Putin.
Or would it be
and here
Russia?
Is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden
suppose
had
it
done
depends
when
if they do the
first
dance
asked
or if they
for it,
put on the earrings,
this war
right?
would be over. But let's also remember this. When you left Afghanistan in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine, don't think for a second.
Oh, we just did it so bad.
To move away from Ukraine.
We should go back in.
Want to move away from Israel
We should go back
a year
in
from now.
so that way we can
America
leave
can
better
never
this
be
time.
So arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. Now is the
9/11.
time to get partnerships.
We needed a
This ongoing
after 9/11, whenever we were
between
crippled.
Russia, Ukraine, and China is real.
We needed so many
There is a reason
friends.
the Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China is coming after them next. There is a reason Ukrainians want us to support Israelis, because they know that if
We were
Iran
outnumbered
wins,
2-1 by
Russia
the
wins.
terrorists.
We have to see the combination of the three.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor Christie, what is your
I'm out of beer. I need.
and how long
Are they gonna give me a chance to go grab more beer, or do I just have to?
Kristen, let's remember the
rip
last
Band-Aid
time
off?
that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe. It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000 Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. This is not a choice. This is the price we pay.
Are you for Gaza
being
or
the
Israel?
leaders of
It's a
the
normal
free
question.
world.
Please don't ban me.
And the fact is, this alliance is not just with Russia and China. Governor Haley knows this. Iran is in the middle of this as well, and so is North Korea. And they are all working to support Russia right now. And the reason they're doing it is because dictators work together. People who believe in democracy work together. We
Pick a
must
side,
stand
brother.
with all of those that are standing up for democracy and freedom in this world. And by the way, let's remind everybody of this. In 1992, this country made a promise to Ukraine. We said if you return nuclear missiles that were part of the old Soviet Union to Russia and they invade you, we will protect you. An American promise that's 31 years old is no different than an American promise that's made tonight on this stage. We need to stand by it. And those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And
So true. I know that quote. Yeah, let's go. I know that quote. You're right.
Absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
Governor Christie, thank you. Governor DeSantis, I'd like you to weigh in.
Is that Chris Christie actually talking sense?
Concerned
Or
that
did I
this could
misinterpret
become
him?
a wider war if Putin is not stopped now?
Well, any suggestion by Zelensky or anyone else that we're going to eventually have U.S. troops there, I can tell the American people when I'm president that will not happen. We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border.
But we are going to kill Mexicans, and we are going to invade Iran.
Southern border. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to have the military, and I'm going to deport the people who've come, particularly under Biden, who've come from the Middle East, come from all these places. Now, Biden wants $105 billion. 60, most of that's Ukraine, including some of it going to pay pensions for bureaucrats and salaries. That is a totally ridiculous use of American tax
employing
dollars.
bureaucrats.
He says he has money for border to try to do, and the media repeat that. When you look at it, what most of the money is money to process more illegal aliens into this country. How is that solving the problem? That's making the problem worse. And what does he do for the Indo-Pacific?
Mexicans are the problem. I've been saying
That's the
this.
top threat that we face. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share. And we need to get serious.
The Europeans need to step up.
This country faces,
Pull your own weight. Why don't you?
So if I may
Thank you,
respond
Governor.
to the Ukraine question.
In fact, we are going to go from the hot wars.
Quit
in
lollygagging
Ukraine and
around.
Gaza and Israel to what many people are calling the new Cold War with China. And I remind the audience that it's important for our visitors at home to be able to hear you, and especially for the people in Beijing to hear you. Many Republicans believe that the Chinese Communist Party and General Secretary Xi is an existential threat to the United States. The flashpoint
Cold
is
War
Taiwan.
II. Cold War II.
For decades and decades, the American military, but primarily the United States Navy, has deterred an attack from China to the island state of Taiwan. But Ronald Reagan's Navy of 600 ships is gone. Now, the question to you is, and I'll start with you, Ambassador Haley, because you were in President Trump's cabinet. His goal was a 355-ship Navy. That's what he pushed for. He got to 300. It's now at 291.
I think we're getting a break
is
maybe
that
at the
big
hour.
enough to deter and, if necessary, defeat an invasion of Taiwan?
China has the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. China has built up their military. It's not just land, air, and sea. They're doing cyber. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing space. America needs to modernize our military. We need to do everything we can. The first thing is you go and you make sure you have the backs of Ukraine. That's why the Taiwanese want us to support Ukraine, because they know that sends the biggest message to China. The second thing is we go to China and we start being tough on them. No more sales of our American soil to China, and let's take back what they've already stolen. Then you go and you to the universities. No more having millions
We
of
can
dollars
have good
spent on
economy and
universities.
also stop
Then
trading
we
with
will go
China.
and
Both of
end
these things
all
are realistic
formal
and
trade relations with China until they
achievable.
stop murdering Americans from fentanyl, something Ron has yet to say that he's going to do. And then we modernize our military. When we strengthen our military,
China fentanyl.
when we modernize it with the focus of cyber, artificial intelligence, and space, when we make sure that we have the backs of
We
our
need to
friends,
make
whether
the
it's
HAL
in
9000.
Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and we should be arming Taiwan. Make sure they have the equipment they need.
Proxy
Make sure
war.
They have the training
Proxy
they need
war.
Now. There's nothing China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back. Let's make sure that we show it by making sure they have the equipment they need.
Governor DeSantis, my question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And
11
what would
ships.
you build if you were going to build more?
Not enough. We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial.
Actually,
of
like,
President
where do
Xi's
we get the money?
ambitions.
You know,
And
I just
if China's able to be the world's
I
leading
don't really know where the
superpower,
money
that will
comes
affect
from
you and your
whenever it comes
family
to
in ways that are going to be very bad. They will
procuring the
export
funds.
authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will
Man, this
impose
shit kinda
things like
loud.
social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path
Why 385?
Over the next 20 years.
If I'm Vivek, I say I'm going to build 1,500 ships.
We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow
10,000 aircraft carriers.
South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their #1 way to do economic development. In Florida,
Watch out the Pendo.
I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities. We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
Senator Scott, you've been in the Congress since 2011. Defense spending has fallen over that entire period of time. Where are we going to get the money, and what would you build, and what kind of ships to deter China from attacking Taiwan?
Well, two major problems with the question. Number one, we do not have currently a defense industrial bank to allow us to have the kind of production that we need in order to keep America safe.
But
frankly, if
we need a defense bank.
And engage in 3 continents at the same
Who
time,
handles the money?
think about where we are today.
We give them
In
so
the
much
Middle
money,
East,
and it just
we are in the midst of trying to back our
blows away in the wind.
ally. In Eastern Europe, we're seeing our resources and our weaponry help degrade the Russian military. The Indo-Pacific, we have real challenges. The long-term threat is China. Immediate threat is our southern border. In order for us to have the military to fight 3 different continents at the exact same time, we are going to have to invest heavily in our military, but
which we're not doing currently.
Heavily in an industrial base so that we can hit our objectives from a military perspective, not only with our ships, but also with our planes. We are so old as a military that in order for us to recalibrate, we're
comparatively to everyone else,
invest. One of the things I do in my Made in America strategy is we create more than 4 million new jobs.
American-made missiles.
High-tech manufacturing come back to America, decoupling from China, so that we focus our attention on creating that industrial revolution that will be necessary for us to achieve the goal of having a military that is ready to be lethal and come home safe.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm
get in, kill a bunch of people, get out.
What would you build? Where would you build it? When would they be in the water? How big would the fleet get?
First answer is
the ship's big. Water, the Pacific or something. I don't know.
We're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building. Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. And today, if he were alive, that's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize
Declaration 2, written by Vivek Ramaswamy.
Tough talk when she was ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians who are independent of the forces that increase our dependence on China. My message to Xi Jinping is this. You are done buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until you play by the same set of rules.
Ramaswamy,
you're kicked out of the
okay, buddy.
And you actually have to have accountability for the
no more businesses
pandemic
moving to China.
Financially, which unleashed hell on the world. We have to hold them accountable.
Do you have a number?
And a little bit of.
I think that we need to increase our naval capacity by at least 20% over the course of the next several years. I think we have to, at minimum, be able to meet our AUKUS agreement standards. Right now, we are at risk of not even being able to meet our AUKUS standards with Australia and the UK. So what we need to do is have a plan that reverses the trajectory of the divest to invest program
Hugh, I'd like to
by 20% over the next 3 years.
Governor Christie?
You know, my first observation.
Okay, but like how many ships?
And my second observation is these 3 in the middle think they're the enemy. I know China is the enemy, and that's what we should be focused on. So let's be really clear. The nuclear submarines in this United States Navy is the greatest deterrent to Chinese aggression, and that is the first place I would go to increase
More
American
nukes.
naval power. Our nuclear submarines are able to move stealthily, quietly, and effectively, and if we are going to deter China from invading Taiwan, the only way we're going to do it is to make sure that they don't know whether how many nuclear submarines from the United States of America are in the South China Sea and in that area.
If you guys
and we're
ever
going to
played
strike on them
Civ,
if they decide to move on Taiwan.
pretty good unit.
And so we, as our first priority, need to go directly to our nuclear sub-program, Hugh, and we need to increase it drastically. That would be priority number one. Ships would come next, but to me, the ships are secondary choice here. The submarines are the single most important thing that we could be using to deter China. But the other thing we could do to deter China is to let them know that the blood money they're spending for Russia in Ukraine right now will not be effective. That we send Putin home with his tail between his legs and make them understand that the same fate waits for them if they decide to move towards Taiwan with a more aggressive nuclear sub-program. We'll be able to make that threat real.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to take a brief pause now. We'll be
Yo,
back
let's
to the
go.
Republican
I can
presidential
re-up on my
primary
beer.
debate. Stay tuned.
Okay, I'm gonna play ads while they play ads and grab some alcohol. Beer break. Yeah. Been a very Warhawk kind of debate in it. Down to the NBC News lo-fi beats to watch advertisements too. I have no idea how many drinking game rules I've missed, but I'm just gonna take like 3 big drinks and call her good. This one's actually not bad. Blueberry pomegranate Vivi hard seltzer, or Vizzy, not Vivi. Oh yeah. And we're back.
And welcome back to tonight's NBC News Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Lester. We're going to stay on China, and we're going to talk specifically about TikTok. Last week, Congressman Mike Gallagher, who is chairman of the House Bipartisan Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, published a long essay on TikTok following the flooding of pro-Hamas propaganda onto TikTok accounts across the United States. Chairman Gallagher called it shocking.
I guess I should have grabbed 2 beers. I drank like half of this already.
America's preeminent adversary, one used to push propaganda and divide America. It's spyware, he said, a means of surveillance. Governor Christie, do you agree with Chairman Gallagher? And if so, would you ban or force the sale of TikTok?
I agree 100% with Chairman Gallagher, and let me say this.
TikTok
is not only spyware, it is polluting the minds of American young people.
Bone bad.
And they're doing it intentionally. And when you saw what happened in the last few weeks with all of this anti-Semitic,
no, this is an actually drinking game. Yeah, check the pinned
algorithms were pushing out
comment on the chat.
Rate. This is China trying to further divide the United States of America. And this is one of the big failings among many of the Trump administration. He talked tough about TikTok. I heard him do it many times. But when it came down to it, he did not ban them when he could have and should have.
Didn't they try?
Since then, we've had an additional nearly 6 years.
I forget history.
Of this type of poison being put out throughout the United States, even putting aside the spying, which we know is going on, and the theft of American personal data and information. So in my first week as president, we would ban TikTok. They want to go ahead and sell it, let them go ahead and
Doesn't
sell
get my
it.
vote. I'm sorry. You had me, Chris, but
Facebook's not
it's a deal breaker.
X is not in China.
X.
They're not permitting a free flow of information to the Chinese people from our social media companies.
It's okay when we do it.
Just open the door and let them do what they're doing. TikTok should be banned because they are poisoning American minds, and I would do it week 1.
Thank you,
YouTube Shorts are good. TikTok is bad. I say this as somebody who makes money on YouTube. Use that one instead.
Operate in China.
Yes, I think that China is the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose. And in order to do that, it's not just military, it's economic, and it's cultural. And as the
we got to win the culture war with China. TikTok's too good.
About the data that they're getting from our young people and what they're doing to pollute the minds of our young people. These kids get these devices and they have a mind of their own. And I know a lot of parents are looking, it's hard to even keep it out. China's
my mind is getting polluted by TikTok.
But this is happening with other things.
Communism is based.
We are going to do that, and we are going to make sure to protect the American people. It's a full spectrum approach to be able to fend China off. Yes, military deterrence. Yes, economic decoupling, but also their role in our culture. If we ignore that, we're not going to be able to win the fight.
Thank you, Governor. Ambassador Haley, speak to the parents.
Almighty
out there.
Wolf, thanks for the tier 1.
TikTok apps on half the phones in this auditorium.
No, I'm going to speak to the fact that 2 people hit me and you didn't let me respond. So let's first talk about the fact that they want to talk about the Chinese land from 10 years ago. Yes,
let me ignore the question and talk about something else.
10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Not only that, you have a company that is manufacturer of Chinese military planes.
He's going.
You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now, one which is 12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it. And of course, we banned China from buying
the
land.
website
Not
last
exactly
week.
a
Go
great
check.
recruiting pitch if you're banning them from purchasing
You
land
scrubbed
at
the
all.
website
So we've stood
last
up.
week.
I'm going to call this one parenthetical
Mr.
inaudible.
Ramaswamy, we've talked about this. You campaign on TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
Well, I want to laugh at
Look at Mr. Uses TikTok over here.
Families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave
Do
my
it.
daughter
Appreciate
out of
it.
your
It's your
voice.
adult daughter. The next generation of Americans are using it. And that's actually the point. Yeah,
What is this crowd reaction?
Propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app. We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a
Sorry,
U.S.-owned
I was looking
company.
for the one where they
So this is
directly
the problem
insult
when
one
you have
another.
Republicans that temporarily
One sip. Oh, it's
go
one
the way
sip.
the
Okay.
winds blow, and now it's popular to talk tough on China. When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather fans of the right policy. Get to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly doing it. Cut the virtue signaling. The fact of the matter is Democrats are on TikTok today. The only person, one of the few people who is putting up content the way the actual algorithms work, speaking for pro-Israel views or others, is
Ambassador
me.
Haley,
I'm the only one using the algorithms on TikTok for good.
Moderators like Kristen don't get to respond to personal attacks, but you do.
Thank you very much. You know, when he talks about me praising China, he doesn't know the fact that the reason China was praised was because I negotiated with China and Russia the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation.
Promise me we can promise the most impossible shit.
That is literally the reason North Korea
There's gonna
stopped
be
testing ballistic missiles.
beer in the water
So I said China
fountains,
did good on
cameras
their
in the
part.
girls'
That
locker
was an
rooms.
Our
You
great
could
friend
never
is
do-
what you said, Nikki. Those are your words, not mine. And so just own up to it.
You would never
You can
have been
change your
able to
mind.
get
That's
that
allowed.
negotiation
But don't
done.
lie to the people about
I
what
have
you've said
fought
or what you've done in
against
South
China
Carolina.
my
You have brought
entire
them
Shouting
to
match.
South
at the
Carolina. Ron is
United
right about
Nations.
that.
Every day I fought China, and I did it
Look at the
by
actual
making sure
hard
no
facts.
one
She
could
brought them
get
to this
any
country.
agency heads in UN.
Dude,
I did it
Vivek
by making
Ramaswamy
sure
has a
that
new
we
pissing contest
called
with
them
a
out on
different
human rights. I
candidate
did it
every
by making
single
sure that we
debate.
held them accountable on everything that they did. That's the reason we got out of the Human Rights Council. That's the reason we called them out. And
It was
there's not
Chris
a
Christie
day I
first,
haven't
and then it was
said
Mike
this.
Pence last time.
Policy experience with the millions you made after.
Everybody else is hanging on to the rules here, Mr. Ramaswamy. Senator Scott.
Thank you.
Oh, forgot you were here.
I appreciate y'all clapping for me already. This is wonderful. Love this. Without any question.
Use the microphone,
what we
homie.
should do is ban TikTok, period. Now, we saw under former President Trump,
China
he
bad.
tried to ban TikTok twice, but was struck down by our federal courts. If you cannot ban TikTok, you
Don't
should
you hate
eliminate the Chinese
checks and balances?
presence on the app. Period. We also should provide, in my parents' Bill of Rights, we give parents the opportunity to give their kids permission under 14 to be on those apps. I think it's incredibly important for us as Americans to take back control of the information.
The kids don't have
especially of our
rights. The
kids.
parents can take it away if
Where
they
does
want
it
to.
go? We should know that. One of the ways that
Saying,
we
no,
get
you're
to
not
know that
allowed.
is by having a parental consent. But if we can eliminate TikTok, that is a first step. But it's not just TikTok.
The kids
China
don't have a right to
continues
browse
spy
YouTube on
our
their
kids, But they're
phones.
also buying our farmlands. We talked about that several times there. We have to make sure that we use the tools that are in our toolkit to stop China from buying farmland near our bases. The third thing we have to do is make
You need to teach
sure
the parents
that they
about
stop stealing
timeout.
our intellectual property. They're literally stealing our IP to compete against us. My administration,
thing.
we stop that day one, and we start making sure
You're taking Bart Simpson from The Simpsons.
made in America through my strategy.
Kristen.
Hugh, thank you so much. We're now going to talk about Venezuela, where millions have fled political and economic
Let's go.
turmoil. Many Venezuelan
Communism's
immigrants are settled
bad.
right here in Florida. Former President Trump and President Biden have taken different approaches to Nicolas Maduro's regime with little result. Former President Trump put economic pressure on Venezuela and backed one of Maduro's rivals. President Biden temporarily eased sanctions to
Isn't
encourage
Venezuela's
electoral reforms.
economy like
Governor DeSantis, do
90%
you see the
dependent on
political
oil prices?
situation in Venezuela as a threat to the United States, and what would your approach be?
We should never rely on Venezuela for oil like Biden has had to go beg. I'm going to unleash all of America's energy potential on day one. I'm taking all the Biden regulations, the Green New Deal, ripping it up and throwing it in the trash can where it belongs. We're going to lower your gas prices. We're going to create jobs.
Gas price low, economy good. Let's go.
More energy independent and secure. We'll choose Midland over Moscow. We'll choose the Marcellus over the Mullahs, and we'll choose Bakken over Beijing. That is good for America's national security. Biden's Green New Deal, that's good for Venezuela, it's good for Russia, it's good for Iran, and it's good for China. So I would turn the screws on the Venezuelan regime.
Green energy is good for the place that is extremely dependent on oil prices.
Never go hat in hand begging for oil from them.
Just to be clear, would you reimpose the sanctions?
Yes, absolutely.
Ambassador Haley, what would your approach be?
You know, I stood on the Simon
what he said, but better.
And watched thousands of Venezuelans cross for hours in the hot sun holding their babies to get the one meal they might get that day going from Venezuela to Colombia. They were fleeing socialism and begging for freedom. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to sanction Maduro. We shouldn't be getting dirty oil, and Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary priority status, which is just going to have more of them come. But on the energy side, it cracks me up that Ron continues to do this. He has opposed fracking. He's opposed drilling. Last time he said it wasn't true, and
I love
everybody
fracking
found
and
out
drilling.
That it was true. He opposed it
I hate
before
this
Florida
guy.
voters even voted on it. He was praised by the Sierra Club, and you're trying to make up for it and act like you weren't a liberal when it comes to the environment. You were. You always have been.
Environmental liberal Ron
But don't keep
DeSantis.
saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that.
So,
our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree.
We're
with
gonna
Nikki
frack
Haley.
the fuck
I don't
out
think
of our
it's a good idea
ground.
to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You banned fracking.
They'll fit a channel. Thanks to Tier Warner.
All right, all, thank you. Let's turn to one of the biggest issues for voters. That, of course, is the economy. This is a question that will go to all of you. An Iowa voter recently told NBC News, "How am I going to make sure my pantry's stocked without breaking the bank?" You've all said the best way to deal with rising prices is to cut government spending. But that would take
too many
play out,
taxes.
and Americans are struggling right now. Senator Scott, I'll start with you.
Let's
What
just do
would you
a
the
stimulus
moment
check.
you take
Just for
office
fun.
to help
No reason in
Americans manage
particular.
the
Just-
cost of living? So we're talking about short term here.
My mother was a single mother who raised me and my brother in a very challenging economic situation.
Poverty is really bad right
When
now.
your gas prices are
I'm claiming with no
40%
basis.
higher right now than they were just a little over 2 years ago. That's not a problem.
How
for
are you
my
gonna
mama.
fix this
That was
real
a
problem?
Crisis. The first thing I would do as President of the United States is I would sign the XL Keystone Pipeline and start seeing resources flow. Second thing I would do is make sure that there's certainty and predictability so that those folks who have the leases in our country would have the certainty and predictability to go ahead and become energy independent. We should focus not just on being energy independent, we should focus on being energy dominant. America is the home to more energy resources than any other country on the planet.
I mean,
We
in
can
terms of,
reduce the price of
if
energy,
we're
we
talking
can
about oil,
reduce
that's
the
not
price
true at
of
all.
Food and the price of electricity if we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan that is embedded. The Made in America strategy creates 10 million new jobs in 3 different
I'm going to
areas.
make
One
a
is
billion
innovation.
jobs.
Second is the high-tech manufacturing, and the
You're gonna have to work 2 jobs. I'm gonna make so many
opportunity as
jobs.
Americans to actually export the surplus energy that we create in our nation and disconnect from China and from murderous dictators and tyrants around the
Your
world.
time is up, but let me just follow up. The idea of pumping gas, of turning on pipelines, that doesn't make gas cheaper that day. I'm talking about you become president. What can you do specifically to help people feel better about their situation or be better with their situation?
This is such a leading question. Like, the only answer, like, well, I'm talking about tomorrow. How do you put food on the table tomorrow? Like, what the fuck do you mean?
Supply versus the demand. When that happens, confidence drives our prices down because we know there's going to be a greater surplus. When you allow for those who have leases to actually start drilling, to start using those leases for more energy excavation, you put our economy in the
does he want him to say that he's going to, like,
strongest position. And as a
expand
result of that, prices
SNAP
start going
programs.
down. That is the kind of
That's
economy
socialism.
that, as president of the United States, I would lead this nation to making sure that we first use the resources in our own country and not going outside of our country in order to achieve our objective. You know, Proverbs 22:7 reminds us that the borrower is slave to the lender. We have become an indentured servant too often to countries like China. By having an energy economy, we start.
Talk about the part where
allowing
you,
this nation
where
to once again
you're meant to forgive the lenders.
Let me ask the same question to Governor DeSantis. Can you give us some, you ticked off a number of things a moment ago, but some specific examples of ways that would put people on a better economic footing right away?
So I started off working minimum wage jobs. I did $6 an hour as an electrician's assistant. I worked all kinds of things to be able to get through school.
And many other such things.
Because I believed in America, if you work hard and get the most out of your God-given ability, you can get ahead. And what's happening now, many of you are working hard and you're falling further and further behind. I've met people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and all across the country who've talked about all the burdens that they're facing with the rising prices. And I've heard from multiple people the same story. When they go grocery shopping, what they now do is they figure out what they have to take out of the cart once it's ringing up, because it rings up so much faster and so much higher at the cash register that they
If
can't
only they
afford
had more
the full
money.
cart of groceries anymore. We have to restore
The wage
the
isn't the
American
problem,
dream in this
it's the
country.
price of
What can you
things.
do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics. I'm going to rip it up, and I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs. That is going to give the economy breathing room, and I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic. They botched it. Congress botched it. Both parties are to blame. Fed should focus on stable prices. They are not an economic central planner for the American people.
Bring a law of Mike saying in front of a mic. Gonna use that one for the campaign
Right.
read.
As a CEO, the economic question is core to my vision and policy prescription for this country. Increase the supply of everything. It's the law of supplies and demand. Increase the supply of energy. That brings down the cost of energy, grows the economy.
More
Drill,
oil
frack,
would make it.
burn coal, embrace nuclear. Increase the supply of labor in this country.
We just need to burn so much different energy sources at the same time,
instead of
or
to
the
go
Earth
to
turns
work.
into a rocket.
Increase the supply of housing. People don't talk about this one in the Republican Party. The land use restrictions are constricting the supply of housing. That's making housing more expensive for ordinary Americans across this country. So that's the true answer. And I think it takes a CEO in the White House who actually understands this to get this done. Because Americans at home, they know the Bidenomics is a lie. Prices are going up. Interest rates and mortgages to buy your home are going up. But wages have remained flat. That's the hard diagnosis for our economy. And this is about more than just our economy. I say this as a member of my generation.
I know one
I'm
thing that we
38 years
shouldn't
old,
do to
the youngest
rectify
person
this.
ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. The reason my generation has lost
hat
our
off.
sense of national pride, in part, is because people in my generation feel like the American dream isn't available to them. And part of the reason why is we burdened them with four-year college degrees that did not serve their head start on the American dream.
That's back
People
on.
will be more proud of a country if we're all making more money in that country. This is how we revive national pride and our identity, and it will take a CEO in the White House with zero-based budgeting, by the way, to take on the federal debt to get this job done.
Let me turn to Governor Christie on that.
Well, look, Lester, part of the entire premise of the question, and I agree with Tim on this,
Just make more
is
money. Stop being
absolutely
poor.
Energy is the key to this because it drives every one of those other prices. You know, now food gets to your grocery store, it gets trucked. And those truckers have to pay for fuel and for the higher fuel prices. And when you go ahead and you tell people, we are going to unleash every bit of American energy, every bit of its potential, what happens in the futures markets? The prices go down because those people who are believing that the Biden program will continue are the ones who are bidding this up. And let me tell you the other place that's bidding it up, in the Middle East. And so if you don't believe that making sure that Israel and that Israel situation that's going on right now isn't resolved and resolved quickly as President of the United States and bring stability back, that will also not permit countries like Saudi Arabia and others to be able to jack their prices as well in what they say is in response to a crisis, when it's really what it's in response to is putting more money in their pockets. When they have an American president who knows that Israel must be defended not with humanitarian pauses and not with suggestions for ceasefire, but with letting them know we will supply them with everything they need, that will also bring stability to the market. Energy is the key to bringing this down. It's what every American family needs when they turn on their lights, fill up their car, and go to the grocery store. And we need to do that first and foremost. That's the short-term answer.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me come at this from a slightly different direction. Americans in rural communities are being especially squeezed by inflation right now. An Iowa State University study found that last year inflation cost rural households about an extra $5,000. How would you specifically help rural Americans who are suffering right now, Ambassador?
Well, I'm a
Pay
product
them
of
more
rural
money.
America. I grew up in rural South Carolina, and I can tell you what we're seeing now in America is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have to go and start beefing up the middle class, and the first thing I would do is I will eliminate
we do that
the
by
federal,
cutting taxes.
gas and diesel tax in this country. We'll cut taxes on the middle class, but we have to stop this spending binge.
That's how you do it. That's the best way to do it.
I will make sure, one, we claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we'll go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that
Middle
exists.
America, notoriously tax fraudulent.
We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any
They
spending
need to stop
bill that doesn't go
pursuing
back to
unpaid
pre-COVID
taxes.
levels. That will cut trillions and allow us to be safe. We also need to
it needs to be
not
easier to do
energy
tax
independent,
crime,
energy
honestly.
dominant. We are blessed with resources. Let's do it. But the reason no one should give you a number, Hugh, on the amount of ships in the Navy is because in a few years, our interest expense is going to be more than our defense budget. So no one can give you that number realistically without first tackling
Senator
what's
Proper?
happening with the
No, they're not
financial
doing-
situation. It would
we're
be
not
a
doing
false number to give you that.
national
We have
Senate
got to
elections right
understand
now.
This is a crisis. It is a national security concern. If we don't deal with what's going to happen with that interest expense in a few years, we're going to look like Japan, and we can't let that happen. The strong dollar.
We can't look like
Ambassador,
Japan.
thank you very much. Chris,
Absolutely not.
Americans could see their Social Security benefits drastically cut in the next decade because the program is running out of money. Former President Trump has said, quote, under no circumstances should Republicans cut entitlements. Governor Christie, first to you. You have proposed raising the retirement age for younger Americans. What would that age be specifically, and would you consider making any other reforms to Social Security?
Sure, and we have to deal with this problem. Now, look,
This is an example where communism good, actually, because it already exists.
I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old.
And people like it.
If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know if out there tonight, and if you're watching Warren, I don't know if Warren Buffett is collecting Social Security, but if he is, shame on you. You shouldn't be taking the money. There are a lot of programs in this country that we all pay for.
For sure.
That we don't get a direct benefit from. Food stamps is one of them. I've never, fortunately in my life, ever had me or my family on food stamps. But I'm glad it's there so that no one in this country goes to bed hungry.
Oh, you like communism, do you?
Availability to that program. But I don't get a direct benefit. The fact is, on Social Security, remember why it was established. It was established as a safety net program to make sure that no one would grow old in this country in poverty. That's what we got to get back to. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security.
Governor, can you give me a specific age, 69, 70? What would the age be?
No, look, that's going to be a part of a negotiation with Congress, Kirsten, and hell, I'm
No.
not going to start negotiating until I get there.
All right, Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in on this because you said in June that you would be open to raising the retirement age. Have you determined what that age would be specifically, and what other reforms are you looking at?
So first of all, any candidate that tells you that they're not going to take on entitlements is not being serious. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Right now, you have Ron and Trump joining Biden and Pelosi saying they're not going to change or do any sort of entitlement reform. What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say, we're going to change the rules. You change the retirement age for them. Instead of cost of living increases, we should go to increases based on inflation. We should limit benefits on the wealthy. Bernie Marcus can tell you he hates getting that check. Limit the benefits on the wealthy, and then expand Medicare Advantage plans. Seniors love that, and let's make sure we do that so that they can have more competition. That's how we'll deal with entitlement reform, and that's how we'll start to pay down this debt.
And can you give me a specific age? Have you determined the age?
Again,
I'm not going to do that. No,
Chris,
I'm
what
not,
I can
no.
tell you is it's going to be those in their 20s just coming into the system, and it should reflect more of life expectancy. It doesn't do that now.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy, have you determined if you would touch entitlement?
We should move the retirement age
So this is really important right now.
as it reflects how long people live.
I believe we will have.
But I'm not going to talk about the
fix
minimum
this
wage
problem
and
while
how that
still leaving
goalpost
Social
is moving.
Security and Medicare benefits for current seniors intact. I'll tell you how. The other candidates assume, like Nikki, that it can't be done, and on her math, she's right about it. But her math assumes
You said Nancy
$7
Pelosi.
trillion
Oh, I know.
of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Minus that,
Where's
our
on the
national debt would
rules?
be $26 trillion right now. Then you go to zero-based budgeting, which I've proposed as a CEO. It's how I've run businesses. It's how many CEOs run businesses. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with 0 as the baseline, and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe. In the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Shut down redundant agencies that should not exist. Deliver economic growth as a positive tailwind. I think we can get to 3, 4, maybe even 5% GDP growth if we really take the regulatory shackles off of our economy. And against that backdrop, I believe this is our last best window to be
And
able
then you
to
flip
take
it
care of
and
our
reverse
national
it.
debt problem through those severe measures, including sacrificing the foreign wars that many bloodthirsty members of both parties have a hunger for. That's the one secret for how we're going to be able to do this, and that requires discipline.
Was he one of
So we
the
can't have
invade
the first
Iran
conversation
guys
around
earlier,
sending
or
foreign aid willy-nilly to countries whose national debt per capita is less than ours.
Thank you,
But if
Mr.
we do this
Ramaswamy.
correctly, I think this is our last window, and it'll take a CEO from the next generation to do it.
Thank you very much. Senator Scott, weigh in here. What are you looking at to keep Social Security sustainable?
The bottom line is a simple one. We have to grow our economy and cut our spending. Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather receiving Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security. The fact is that we're spending
I wasn't
today
going to vote for
about
him, but
$1.1 trillion of Social Security.
now that I know that my
$750 billion
paltry
on Medicare, about $300
spending money
billion on Medicaid, about $400
that I rely
billion
on
veterans benefits,
won't be ripped out from under
$1.7 trillion of
me.
annual appropriations. If we're going to actually tame this tiger, the way you do it is not by picking on seniors who have paid into a program that deserve their money coming back out to them. The way you deal with it is, number one, you have to grow your economy. My plan, Made in America, creates 10 million new jobs, grows our economy at 5%. By doing so, you add trillions of dollars of economic activity and billions of dollars to your treasury. Number two, you have to cut taxes. When we cut taxes in 2017, I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everybody said, well, guess what? Revenue will go down. Well, in 2018, after we wrote it in 2017, what happened? Revenue went up by 3%, and the next year it went up by another 3%. So what we know is that the
My ass is
Laffer
falling
curve
asleep.
still works, but the lower the tax, the higher the revenue. And finally, if we're going to deal with it, we have to take our annual appropriations back to pre-2020, pre-COVID levels of spending, which would save us about $500 billion in the next budget window. By doing that, we
Correlation
do
is causation, by the way.
and our mandatory spending.
Thank you, Senator. Very quickly, would you raise the retirement age? Would you be open to raising the retirement age, or do you rule that out?
All you have to do is go to a farm in Iowa
I thought he was about to plug his website.
and watch the hard work and the dedication.
Yes or
you and
no,
I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no,
answer
though?
is no. But listen to this though, before you go on. Thank you. The fact of the matter is that the more physical your labor,
bottom line,
a year
as
or
John
two or
McCain
three
said so.
more is actually challenging to the physical body. You and I might have a different perspective, but for those farmers, they're working night and day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Governor DeSantis, finally,
Counterpoint, shut up.
America is the most open, least racist nation on the planet.
Sustainable.
Well, look, as governor of Florida, I know a few people on Social Security, and I know it's important. My grandmother lived till 91, and Social Security was her sole source of income, and that's true for a lot of seniors throughout this country. So what I'd say to seniors in America, promise made, promise kept. I understand what you're going through with the rising prices, and you need that Social Security check. So we'll make sure to get that done. What can you do to help shore up Social Security? One of the things that's causing problems
Awfully
is the
communist
inflation.
of you, Rhonda.
We have to reduce inflation. When you have higher inflation, the seniors get a cost of living adjustment, which means the program's spending more, but it doesn't cover the increase in the actual inflation rate. We also do need to get to at least 3% growth. You're never going to be able to have issues, be able to solve the budget without that. But I would note this. Congress for decades took money from Social Security. Social Security would have more tax revenue than it put out. They would take it and then they'd write an IOU to Social Security. Congress has a lot of dirty hands on this. I'm going to force Congress to stop spending so much money. And you know, one thing we have to we talk about the retirement age is just something that's changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you
I think
raise
that's
the
only
retirement
true
age?
because like 2 million
expectancy's
people died during
declining,
COVID.
I don't see how you could raise it the other direction.
I'm pretty
So
sure
it's
that's
one thing to
because like
peg
a
it
whole
on
lot
life
of people died of
expectancy,
COVID.
But we have had a significant decline in
I
life
think
expectancy.
other than that, life expectancy
All right,
was
Governor
growing.
DeSantis, thank you, candidates, and we will be right back after a quick break from Miami, Florida.
All right. Yeah, I think life expectancy went down during like 2020, 2021, and now it's going back up again. I think. I haven't fact checked that. Anyways, another break, another beer. Another break, another beer. Let's go. All right, man. What's that story about high-end brothels? I don't know, but sounds pretty lit.
America is the most open, least racist nation on the planet.
Yo, Zog Fries, thanks for the prime. Bum.
Welcome back to
Why we're
tonight's
scored.
NBC
Tier 1,
News
thank you.
Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Salem Radio.
Bring him for the first time.
When NBC
Ever?
News talks to voters, when I
That's
talk
crazy.
to voters every day, they all
What an
say
occasion.
that the border is a top issue. It can mean a lot of different things. It can mean 2 million people.
Sorry
who
that it has to be
crossed illegally
Smirnoff.
last year. It can mean
Then
more
thanks
than
for the prime.
150 arrests of people on the terror watch list. It can mean the burden on states from having migrants move into their states from the southwestern border. But I want to talk about opioids specifically and fentanyl.
Let's go.
Scott.
Opioids
Tens
up
of
top.
Thousands of Americans' families have suffered a death to fentanyl. Young people sometimes die taking one pill. What can you do as
Dying
commander-in-chief on the
instantly.
first day to stop fentanyl and the
Insta-kill
waterfall of it into this country?
Percocet.
Well, number one, we should close our southern border. For $10 billion, we could close our southern border. For an additional $5 billion, we could use the currently available military technology to surveil our southern border to stop fentanyl from crossing our border. I've already led
We need UAVs flying around in South Texas.
Cartels. If you remember the path, the precursors come from China. Then they are manufactured in Mexican labs, and then the Mexican cartels bring them across our border. By sanctioning their accounts and eliminating their cash, we starve them of what they need. Number one, closing our southern border makes it nearly impossible to get in. The military-grade technology is a backup, making sure that we not only stop 70,000 deaths in the last 12 months.
Bro's like,
fentanyl,
he was like
it
struggling
also
to read
allows us
the
to deal with
teleprompter
the
in his brain.
human trafficking travesty that is entering in our country in the same path. If we are going to deal effectively with 100,000 overdose deaths in our country and the 70,000,
The opioid
epidemic
epidemic is a new thing.
We have to deal with our ports of entry,
And we need to stop it
deal
now.
with our southern border. If we do that effectively, we have started reducing the challenge from the
I think Tim
outside,
Scott's a little
and then we have to
eepy.
deal with the challenge on the
He's not doing so
inside,
hot here
which seems to be
after the 90-minute
connected
mark.
to a mental health crisis that is spreading throughout
Senator.
our nation.
Governor Christie, Senator Scott just mentioned ports of entry. 90% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is seized at ports of entry. We don't know what's coming in across the open southern border. You've been a United States attorney. You've taken on cartels. Can it really be done quickly? What would you do as president?
It can be done quickly in two ways, Hugh, on fentanyl. The first way is exactly as you suggest, at ports of entry. We have to beef up what our law enforcement has in terms of technology. I would invest in that as president. We need to make sure that law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to do it. Secondly, on day one, I would sign an executive order that would send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol, both at ports of entry and at the open ports of our border. Customs and Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. There's 200,000 encounters a month over the last 11 months. We simply do not have the man and woman power at the border to be able to deal with it. And so dealing with both law enforcement, and you're right, we have done
We
this.
need
can
more
do
women
this,
ICE
but we
agents.
got to give them the tools to do it, and technology is one of the biggest tools that we don't have enough of at the ports of entry. Now, we also need to lower demand.
What if we had
too,
like
in this
automated
country.
turrets?
And the way to lower demand is to start
Little
treating
voices
people.
that
You know, we started to do this before COVID.
say
and we
funny
haven't done enough of
things
it.
when we
And for every
put them
family
over.
out there tonight who has lost a loved one to fentanyl or to any other type of opioid overdose, what you know is all you want is a chance for them to win their lives back. When I'm president of the United States,
You gotta
we're gonna
earn it in the
call this
gulag,
what it
brother.
is. It is a disease like heart disease, diabetes, or any other disease like cancer that can be treated, should be treated. We not only have to stop supply, but we have to lower demand and save lives.
Governor. Governor DeSantis.
We need to ask people to stop being addicted to opioids, in my opinion.
The United States Special Forces to attack the cartels where they manufacture the chemicals that come from China. How often? How many? What does that look like?
Well, first, I was speaking to a dad who lost a son to fentanyl overdose. Son wasn't a drug addict. He had taken some pill that happened to be laced with fentanyl, and it was a fatal overdose. And when he told me,
Died
obviously
instantly.
the pain of losing a child is as bad as it gets. But he said what was salt in the wounds is that these elites in D.C. don't give a damn about what's
And then
going on in
afterwards,
this
the
country.
Chinese send you a
They
text
don't
and it says
care
neener,
that
neener,
we have
neener.
tens of thousands of opioid deaths, that the fentanyl's pouring in. They are not taking the type of action we need to. We're declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold.
We're going to stop fentanyl with the good old power of the M16.
Build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build a wall. But we are going to designate the cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations
wall, by the way,
or something similar to that. And we're going to authorize the use of deadly force. We're going to have maritime operations to interdict precursor chemicals going into Mexico. But I'll tell you this, if someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Ambassador Haley.
He said the line. He said the line. Let's kill Mexicans.
The United States uses special forces in Mexico without prior notice to the Mexican allies to our south. What would your colleagues at the United Nations think about that?
I don't care what my colleagues at the United Nations think. What I'll tell you
They
is,
can go blow it out their ass.
first of all, you have to go to the source. We have lost more Americans than the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. We lost 75,000 Americans last year. Go to the source. It is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow
it's
stops.
China's fault.
The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers are, and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job.
Is that the right number?
Sanctuary cities.
Why not?
We will go back
If
to
I'm
the
Vivek, I
Remain
say
Mexico
I'm going to do
policy so that
50,000.
everybody stays in Mexico and they never get here in the first place. And instead of catch and deport, we'll go to catch and release. I'm sorry, instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is the way we'll deal with the
Oops, I said the wrong
Those are
thing.
the things that we have to do going forward. But I do agree with Chris. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer that it is.
Mr. Ramaswamy.
Come on, Vivek, hit me with one.
Mexico, shoot them stone cold dead at the border.
One thing I just want to say, and how we're talking about this issue is, like Ron, I've actually met many parents across this country who have lost their kids to laced pharmaceuticals that have fentanyl in them. The only thing I would ask, Ron, I think you'd be on the same page with me on this. Let's not even call that an overdose. Right. That is not an overdose. That is poisoning. If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, we would not call that an overdose. You'd call it what it is. It's closer to bioterrorism. And I say that because as it uniquely relates to this crisis, that does warrant more aggressive means to deal with it.
Put that in a Big Mac.
So there's a new presidential election in Mexico in 2024. People may not be aware of that. It's going to be someone other than Obrador, who has been a disaster in Mexico. I think he's even mentioned me obliquely in speeches to say that somebody who would do this shouldn't get anywhere near the White House. Well, AMLO, get out of the way. There's going to be someone else in charge. I hope to build a good relationship with that next president of Mexico. We'll use our own military to seal our own southern border. What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home. Get serious about protecting this border. And then the other thing that
what about Israel?
Is the northern border. I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3
It's coming from
million
Canada
Americans. So
too.
we got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck is. Don't just build the wall, build both walls. Can't just complete the wall. Use
Because
the military
Canada
to
likes
seal the
hockey?
Swiss cheese for the tunnels that they're actually building underneath that wall.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what it needs to be
Ramaswamy.
practical and actually get this job done.
Thank you. Kristen.
Thank you,
The proverbial puck. The proverbial hockey puck of fentanyl.
Results. Abortion rights supporters saw victories in Ohio and Virginia following earlier wins in states like Kansas and Kentucky.
Kansas?
Governor DeSantis, first to you, how do you see the path forward for Republicans on this issue?
Well, I stand for a culture of life, and I understand that it's important that everyone
Abortion
gets a shot.
bad.
I'm reminded of a story about a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, baby wouldn't have
Abortion?
opportunity, and she came close. to have an abortion, but she decided to have the baby born poor in Jamaica.
That kid's name,
and the reason I know that
Albert
story
Einstein.
is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022. We're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when we can promote a culture of life.
Anecdote Andy. He really is Anecdote Andy.
Some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as New Hampshire. Iowa's not necessarily going to do it the same as Virginia. So you got to work from the bottom up. You got to do a better job on these referenda. I think of all the stuff that's happened to the pro-life cause, they have been caught flat-footed on these referenda, and they have been losing the referenda. A lot of the people who are voting for the referenda are
Ron knows too many young mothers. He
Republican
knows a lot of young
so
mothers.
You got to understand how to do that. But let's just be clear.
Let's go,
the
Ron.
Democrats have taken a position. They will not identify the point at which there should be any protection all the way up until birth. That is wrong, and we cannot stand for that.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in. Former President Trump has consistently blamed the abortion issue and how Republican candidates have talked about
Well,
it.
what about that thing that happened yesterday where it was actually you guys were talking out your ass and
with the American people.
Not
This
actually
is
an
a
electable
personal issue
position
for
to have
every
anymore.
woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted, and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe,
I had trouble having both of my children. I'm surrounded by blessings. Thank you, Lord Jesus, for not permitting me to have my own
and what I'll tell you
children.
is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest, it's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it.
Be realistic. Not going to happen.
We haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions anymore.
Let's be honest, the system's bad.
These state laws. So let's find consensus.
Nothing's happened in over 100 years.
Agree on how we can ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure.
All right, nope, I'm out.
State laws
Nope,
put a woman
sorry.
in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion.
Condoms are for the devil.
Let's focus on how to save as many babies as we can and support as many moms as we can and stop the judgment.
They don't
We
even
need
work,
to divide
to be
America
honest.
over this issue anymore.
Thank you, Ambassador. Senator Scott. Senator Scott, I'd like you to weigh in. How do you see the path forward, and what do you make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you see this as a consensus issue?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit. I would not allow states like California, Illinois, or New York to have abortion up until the day of birth. I certainly wouldn't not allow for governors, former governor, Democratic governor of Virginia, who talked about infanticide. We need a 15-week federal limit. 3 out of 4 Americans agree with a 15-week limit.
I don't think that's true.
47 out of
Source, I made it up.
in Europe agree with a 15-week limit. I would challenge both Nikki and Ron to join me at a 15-week limit. It is in our nation's best interest, and frankly, I think it's unethical and immoral to allow for abortions up until the day of birth. We have an opportunity in this nation to stop that reckless behavior from states like California, New York, and Illinois. I'd go a step further. In my parents' plan, we start by talking about funding, block granting resources to crisis pregnancy centers. We should support adoption. There are a number of ways that we can say to the expectant mother that we stand with you. We should not only be pro-life,
But you do have to. You do have
we should
to
be pro-life
squeeze it
after the
out
child is
first.
born,
Like
just
that
as
is
much.
required.
Senator Scott, thank you. Ambassador Haley, your name was invoked. Would you support a 15-week federal limit?
I would support anything that would pass because that's what would save more babies and support more moms. But you have to be honest with the American people, and I appreciate that Tim keeps calling me out for this. But Tim, there was a bill last year. Lindsey Graham sponsored it. You didn't even co-sponsor the bill. And then when you first were interviewed on this, when you ran, you wouldn't even say you were for 15 weeks. What I'm saying to the American people is, let's see what we can agree on. Let's bring people together and decide what we can agree on. I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Let me go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Would you support a 15-week
America, it's your fault for not voting the right senators in.
Nikki Haley did invoke being honest, and I at least want to give credit to Tim Scott. He's honest about where he stood, and I think you should be honest, not making a political calculus, but to say, if a bill is served up, would you sign it? Here's my view on this. Speaking as a man, they say men have trouble speaking on this issue. I don't think we need to be that way. It was my home state of Ohio, I'm upset about this, yesterday, that passed a constitutional amendment that now effectively codifies a right to abortion all the way up to the time of birth without parental consent.
Let's go.
Well, back to that Republican culture of losing. The Republicans did not have an alternative amendment or vision on the table. I know Ohio. I was born, raised, and I lived there. It's representative of the country. If in the state of Ohio we talked about access to contraception, adoption, and also here's the missing ingredient in this movement, sexual responsibility for men. We live in an era of reliable genetic paternity tests that are 100% reliable. So we can say men deserve more responsibility. So we can tell women we're all in this together. It's not men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights. And I come back to that case that Clarence Thomas spoke of. A pregnant woman walking down the street. She's assaulted. The unborn child dies in that assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve liability for that death. You won't find one. That says we share the same instincts on this issue, but we require, I believe, a different generation of leadership
thank you.
to actually lead us
What is
forward
it?
and unite the country on this.
How did he?
Honesty.
What's the connection between the first thing that he was talking about?
Federal limits are important to a lot of Republicans. Where do you stand on this issue, and what is the path forward for Republicans?
For 50 years, conservative lawyers have been arguing that the federal government should have absolutely nothing to do with
I thought he
this
was about
issue
to say, like,
constitutionally
men
because
need
it's
to
no
stop
way in the
having
Constitution.
unprotected sex at
And then
first, and I was like,
Dobbs
that's not going to
comes,
happen.
And we finally gained that victory, which was the creation of a constitutional right out of thin air that didn't exist. And now we have people running to say, let's short circuit the states from doing what they need to do, and let's go right to some type of federal ban at a certain number of weeks. And people on the stage have been all over the place, 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 12, 6. Look, the founders were really smart. And this is an issue that should be decided in each state.
Thanks,
And I
Raj.
trust the people of this country, state by state, to make the call.
I
for
think
themselves.
whenever
Now, it's
you
gonna lead to a lot of
invoke
divergence. In
states'
Oklahoma,
rights,
you can't get an
that's
abortion
whenever
unless
you're
the
trying
life
to
of the mother
defend
is
an
at risk.
indefensible
In my home
position.
state of New Jersey, it goes up to 9 months that you get an abortion. I find that morally reprehensible.
When you say,
but that is
I don't
what
know
the
what the
people of
right
our
answer
state have
is. I
voted
think
for.
people should
And we should not
decide for
short-circuit
themselves.
that process until every state's people have the right to weigh in on it. But here's the bigger issue, Kirsten. The bigger issue is, and Tim began to touch on this, we're not pro-life for the whole life. To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well too. Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten, it's for the whole life.
All right, Governor, thank you. Candidates, thank you. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, we'll hear
Let's
from all
break.
of you with your closing statements. This is the NBC News Republican presidential debate. We'll be back right after this.
Just pooped in. This guy seems kind of based. All I'm saying is that I should have the right to kill myself. So I think that means abortion should be legal. I didn't consent to being alive. Ramaswamy quote, "We've become a party of losers." I love that Vivek Ramaswamy's position is to just go up there and say the most out-of-pocket shit constantly. No one said anything about trans people. That is pretty surprising. I guess I guess there's more exciting things to talk about. Yo, discussing a pause in fighting of up to 3 days? That's like a long time. Yeah, it is actually surprising that we haven't mentioned in any sort of transgender topic whatsoever. That's usually in the playbook. We do still have time, so I feel like we're gonna come back from break and we're just gonna like ask for closing statements, and then we're gonna wipe our hands and then end it. GOP strategists urge congressional candidates to campaign against the national abortion ban. Uh-oh, our position is unelectable. I guess it's time to move the goalpost. This was true like a year ago, whenever we were doing midterms, but I was really surprised where a very large percentage of the country who were on this particular poll or whatever, but their number one voting issue was abortion rights, which I found surprising. Like, obviously it's important, but I'm surprised that was like the number one thing for a very large percentage of the voter base.
Well, welcome back, everyone. With only 2 hours for a debate, we know there are other major issues that are important to Republican primary
Give me
voters.
the 8-hour debate.
I'll ask you each to please use your closing
give me the
statement
marathon.
to focus on any topic you didn't have time to address and why you and not former President Trump would be the party's best choice to tackle these important issues. You each have a minute. Senator Scott, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
There's a crisis that is growing in our nation, and that crisis is cultural and spiritual. We need a renewal, a great awakening. We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society.
The left has no father.
To faith, patriotism,
no dad have an ass. Liberals.
We should stop choosing victimhood and start choosing victory. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in prayer. There are basic truths that built this country.
He's ripping out of the Rhonda playbook.
You work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And
actually, college being the price that it is good, and you sign up for the debt, and so you're the dumbass. Get tricked, idiot. 17-year-old ass signing up for these loans, have an ass.
Together to win the war. The war for our Christian conservative values that changed my life.
Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, you have.
That's why I'm asking you for your vote.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for hosting tonight. Listen, it's a gift to be an American. And I'm running for president of the United States because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the division. I'm tired of seeing the anger. And I could see in the eyes of Americans their exhaustion. Their exhaustion from the petty, personal politics that have taken over this country over the last number of years. I'm running for president to be a president of consequence, to do the big things, to make sure that America's role in the world stays #1, that we stand up for our friends and allies around the world, and we stand up for what we believe in right here at home. And it's not to eliminate our differences. Our differences has always been our strength as a country, not our weakness. But you can't truly say you love America unless you're ready to open up your heart to every American. I'm going to open up my heart to every American as president, and I will make sure that I return honesty, integrity to the Oval Office. We deserve and should accept nothing less.
Governor, thank you very much. Let's go to Mr. Ramaswamy now. Your 1 minute.
I feel like Chris Christie didn't say anything at all.
Wars tonight, but we're in the middle of a war right here at home. It's a war not between black and white or Democrat and Republican. It's between those of us who believe in our founding ideals and love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander-in-chief to lead us to victory in that war, who first of all knows that we're in a war. Second of all, can't be captured by the special interests along the way. But third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China.
Okay.
I'll keep us out of World War III, and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the
Nationalism wouldn't be very good for your electability, Mr. Vivek.
We know he's not even the president of the United States. He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just
Mr.
tell us the
Ramaswamy,
truth so we can have an honest debate.
Huh? Michelle Obama mentioned?
1 minute for your closing.
Thank you. The world is on fire. We have a war in Europe.
How about
We've got
yours?
a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march. It is very important that we know how to defend our freedoms and how to defeat terrorism and socialism. We have to know the difference between good and evil. We have to know the difference between right and wrong. We need to know that a strong America doesn't start wars, a strong America prevents wars. And the way we can focus on that is to make sure
Notorious for preventing war, America.
and be strong and proud again. And we can't do that. We can't win the fights
Taking a drink for
of
that
the
one.
21st century with politicians from the 20th century. We have to move forward, and we can
Get out of
do
the way,
this.
old man.
I know we can do this. So join
I
our
say this with
movement.
a
Go to
unblemished record of
NikkiHaley.com, and we will once
heterosexuality.
again show what
He
America
looks
that's
good,
strong and
he
proud
looks hard.
looks like. God bless.
Ambassador, thank you.
Go to my website.
Governor DeSantis, your closing. You have 1 minute.
We must reverse our country's decline, and that is going to require leadership.
We need to make
I will
it-
take the hits. I will take the arrows. I will take the barbs.
We need to do
'Cause it's not
something
about
with
me,
it,
It's about
probably.
you. It's not about the past.
And
it's
return
about
to
your
how it
future.
was.
We are going to fight for you. I am going to win for you and your family, and I'm going to lead this country's revival. As a veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self as president.
Oh,
As the father
let's
of
go
3 young kids,
alliteration.
I'm going to ensure that this
Can we do it
country is
again?
left to the next generation in better shape than we found it. And as the governor of Florida, I delivered on all my promises, and you can trust me to deliver for you as the president of the United States. I am asking for your vote. I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the election. I will be a leader you can be proud of, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis, thank you.
Okay, buddy.
That is going to conclude our debate. The next line says, if the audience can hold their applause. That didn't work out. But anyway, for just a few more seconds, I'll ask you to just hold the applause. On behalf of my fellow moderators, I want to thank the candidates for their time and for this spirited debate. Really good, deep conversation, and we appreciate you all being here. Thank you as well to our wonderful hosts here at the Adrienne Arsh Performing Arts Center. On behalf of the Republican National Committee and all of us at NBC News, good night, everyone, from Miami.
And I'm like, wow. Every time. Every time I'm like, wow. not nearly as much.
That was make or break for all the candidates, and each of
that was make or break. Will they win? Not nearly as much transphobia in that one.
Here in the spin room, as you are looking live at these candidates on stage, one of the most intriguing
definitely the least
parts of
transphobic of the 3 debates so far.
Greeting spouses, kids, people who have come to see them here at the Adrian
Holy
Arts
Vivek
Center,
family.
where we are located.
There's a
here
little
in
Vivek.
2 fiery hours, 2
We love you.
substantive hours.
You're very
Some shots
special.
fired at Donald Trump, at President
Fair
Biden,
Cobb with
at
Tier
each
1,
other,
thank you.
Tom, with these candidates now taking a moment here as we watch some of the interactions. We saw that brief handshake between Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. We saw Nikki Haley, Chris Christie interacting, and there, Tom, is Vivek Ramaswamy.
Along with his wife, Apruva, and something we did see as well, Vivek making a quick U-turn, avoiding Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley's daughter on stage right now next to her. As you remember, she was invoked in this debate. Ramaswamy going after her, saying she had downloaded TikTok. She was on TikTok, essentially saying that Nikki Haley...
Nikki Haley, daughter TikTok. Vivek owned the debate. No, he didn't.
It was the pivotal moment in this debate, I would argue.
The former UN ambassador clearly...
I feel like you could say that he owned every debate. He's just the one who says the most out-of-pocket bullshit.
Senator Scott and Governor Christie.
Excuse me, and I think we should go back to Ramaswamy. It looked like he was...
I think he's the biggest clown, so, you know, if it's a clown contest, then I would agree.
It looked like he was talking to somebody in the front row in sort of a very loud manner. We know they went back and forth, and from what we understand, the RNC chair, when she was getting attacked in the middle of the debate, really in the first few minutes of this debate, she was not too happy.
LeBron in 5.
We're going to ask our producing team to take a look at that interaction there as we're watching some more of it here on stage. This debate, in large part, at least in the first half, dominated by...
The real winner of this debate was me, because I'm on the bottom of my 4th beer.
Candidates draw distinctions on some of these foreign policy topics,
you know,
on China, for example, on Ukraine, and specifically on Iran, where we heard some new announcements here from Senator Tim Scott as we're taking another look here at Vivek Ramaswamy. Some of these candidates are sort of talking to some of the supporters, some of the donors who are in the hall. 1,500 people.
I've actually,
I see Vivek there with his...
I'm probably like net neutral on money, because if anything, I'm a little poorer because I've
exactly, but it looks like they may be having...
I was working on an Alpharad video, but I was like, oh shit, debate. Better stop what I'm doing
He attacked the RNC for setting up this debate
and stream the debate.
And for a lot of the debate, he was on the attack. It was Vivek first, the rest of the room. When we look at the rest of the candidates and who received a lot of that income...
Are we going to start up the Hallmark Christmas movies and stuff? I'm moving to LA next month. So if I get set up in LA in a timely fashion,
was on offense tonight.
In like the middle of December, I will make that a reality.
Will this debate change the game, given where things stand politically? Because obviously we have these 5 candidates on stage. Donald Trump, over the course of the last 2 hours, has not been in this building. He's about 20 minutes away from his own rally in Hialeah.
That's not a guarantee.
The question is, did any voters' minds change? Because right now, Donald Trump is not just ahead in the polls, he is dominating in the polls, specifically in the early states of Iowa and New Hampshire
Hollywood.
as well. As
I might add, moving into North Hollywood actually is a possibility.
We should mention Senator Tim Scott, along with his mother, his biggest supporter. She was at the
that is actually in the realm that I'm shopping, is to go to North Hollywood.
Talking about what it means for gas prices, that gas prices, when they are on the rise, they are a crisis in the American family. Also saying that raising the retirement age for Social
What exact address are you looking at? Yeah, DM me on Discord. I'll give you an exact list of the locations and the very particular things that I have narrowed down. I got you.
Because he is somebody who has made the threshold, but just barely for these debates.
Move to Palm Springs. There's a lot of gay people there.
Yeah, so I think Nikki Haley has walked off the stage now without looking at or shaking Vivek Ramaswamy's hand. I think we hopefully will have a chance to speak
Callie's
to her
goated. I love it.
We'll ask her about
the things I'm looking forward to for moving to California include being able to walk to things that are nearby. Things that I don't look forward to are pretty much everything else.
Reaction here from what we've just seen over the course of these last 2 hours. You heard not just foreign policy, not just the economy, but this issue of abortion access specifically right toward the
traffic
end. Given
bad.
What we've seen in the last 24 hours,
gas prices bad. Rent bad.
Ohio, Kentucky, Virginia, you saw voters move to protect that access.
One thing we didn't hear a lot of was former President Trump.
Liberals.
And I want to go to our Garrett Haake right now, who can explain to our viewers who have been watching this debate for the last 2 hours. Garrett, it's been polled that when these Republican candidates attack the former president, even though they're trying to beat him and they're running against him, it actually hurts them.
Ooh, he doesn't like Trump. I'm not voting for him. I'm going to vote for Trump.
From the front runner who's been dominating this race, you heard them do it in a way where they basically wrapped their criticisms of Donald Trump in praise of his presidency, because they're trying to give a permission structure to his voters to say, yes,
depending on where you land, you might be in a swing district. I'm moving into like the Valley in Los Angeles. I don't think I will be.
Attacking Donald Trump directly can make a candidate less popular with the very Republican voters they are trying to win over. It's something that Chris Christie has struggled with. It's something Mike Pence struggled with. Part of the reason he's not in this race anymore. So you saw these candidates in this real bind. None of them can be the Republican nominee unless they go through Donald Trump to get there. It's just mathematically not possible. But to do that, I think all of them are making similar calculations about trying to be the last person standing or hoping someone else will do the dirty work for them. And if we end this
that's like
cycle, if we
probably like
end
next
this
month.
primary cycle with Donald Trump once again as the Republican nominee, I think
America is the most open, least
Did I miss it? You did. It's over. We're wrapping up.
Taking the opportunity to draw
James Noye,
more
thanks to
direct
Primer.
contrast with
Good
the
luck with
front
Cali
runner who's been
Gamer.
squashing
Yeah, it should be
them in
fun.
state and national polls is going to be part of the reason why we could end up in that same place like we saw in 2015 into 2016.
Garrett, you make the
Bro is not even
point
attempting
that
to talk
while
into his
there
mic.
some framing here that this
Is it a
race
prop?
now to see who
That
can
thing even
take
like
that
on? Is that a real
second-place
mic?
position and take on Donald Trump perhaps in a closer to one-to-one matchup. They are running out of time. Of course, the Iowa caucus just 68 days away. Garrett Haake, thank you so much. Let me pick up here in the spin room with our panel who is joining us here on set. Former Deputy Press Secretary for former President Trump, Hogan Gidley, former Republican Congressman
Going
from
to watch
right
the
here in
Newsom
Southern Florida,
DeSantis
Carlos
debate?
Curbelo, and conservative columnist Mary Catherine Ham. We are glad
That a-
to have you all
that a
here.
thing?
Hogan, I'll start with you because you are
The
somebody who
real
is in
thing
touch,
that's
of
really
course,
gonna
as a
happen?
former Donald Trump staffer with that team. You understand this Republican Party. What's your biggest
Donald Trump staffer, give it to me.
I think, look, you're running a primetime debate. You have primetime players up on stage, but the primetime person that everyone wants to see is Donald Trump. He's not here. It's difficult for anybody to gain oxygen when he sucked it all out of the room. Even though he's not here, he obviously looms large. People had some
Donald Trump
moments
is
here,
looming.
obviously, and I talked about this before the debate. What you want to do is create a moment. You want to take that moment and build it into momentum and ultimately a
And here's where the real politicking happens after the cameras go off and we talk to the real people who really matter.
Joe Biden a sex criminal and a segregationist. She had T-shirts ready, it was good to go, and then it just fell flat and went away. There were some moments tonight where people had some zingers for each other. They said some things to Donald Trump. About Donald Trump.
Some
but
zingers.
I don't know that that's going to change the calculus.
It was his girlfriend in the
here, and he is the front runner.
very extra hoop jacket.
And we are just moments away from hearing from Governor Ron DeSantis, who was center stage.
Is that Rhonda wife?
I do want to ask you, texting with a lot of Republican viewers, people who are in the hall, people who are watching at home, I'm getting a lot of texts that Nikki Haley had a big night. Was she the winner in tonight's debate?
Well, I think Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis had strong performances, Tom. This was a different debate than the ones the previous two. There was not a circus-like atmosphere. Right. It was very substantive. It was very serious. I think the moderators did a great job. And Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis did what they had to do tonight. They showed that they were competent. You know, a lot has been said about Ron DeSantis and his personality and his
Did he shine enough? Did he shine enough tonight?
I thought Ron DeSantis was at ease tonight. He was comfortable. Maybe it's because he's in his home
Ron
state.
felt kind of comfortable out there.
That helps, right? So I really do think that those two candidates kind of reestablished or reaffirmed their positions as the leader of this pack, the race for second place.
Mary Catherine, you heard talk about how Ron DeSantis seemed comfortable on
It's
this
the race
stage
for
in his
second
home
place.
state. Nikki Haley, of course, former UN ambassador.
He said what we're all
foreign policy is
thinking.
in many ways her wheelhouse, and yet one of the biggest moments for her was her clapback at Vivek Ramaswamy when he went after her daughter, as we talked about, when he talked about her high heels as well.
Yeah, yes, please, have at it. I wanted her to note how high her heels were and to clap back at that, and I wanted her to say...
I want it to become a clap back
her
competition, honestly.
She's not supposed to be dictating her social media presence at this point, and if she did, we would call her a weirdo for doing that. And no man would be asked about how he was monitoring his children's social media presence. So there's that.
Is that
look, I do think Ron DeSantis did
I
seem
don't think that's true.
and the thing about
I think if I feel like
momentum is key, right? So I think
I don't think that's a gendered
came right
issue.
out of the gate coming after Trump a bit, saying he should answer your questions here on this stage was good. Plus the Kim Reynolds endorsement in Iowa, build on that a little bit. you have a little bit of momentum at your back.
Hogan, you know former President Trump well. How would you rate how former Ambassador Nikki Haley and Governor Ron DeSantis handled Vivek Ramaswamy? Because I think that if you can't handle Vivek on this debate stage, how are you going to handle Donald Trump?
Again, some had some good moments.
How are you going to handle Donald?
Moments. I thought the back and forth was interesting.
Where's Doug Burgum? That's what I'm saying. Been saying it all day.
Do not like each other. They went after each other the whole time. Ron DeSantis got into it to some degree with the China issue in South Carolina. They went back and forth over that. Listen, I do think that DeSantis and Haley clearly are a cut above the rest of the field at this point. Nowhere near where Trump is, obviously, but they are separating themselves. You're right. It was a very substantive debate. They didn't step on each other. It wasn't a melee, and they weren't yelling at each other. It didn't look like a food fight. They were
TFW, no melee.
People, here's where we need to take this country, and I'm the best person to do it. The problem is, I think the front runner has a better shot at that.
Dude, why do we have just a Trump shill on the spin room cast? It's so weird. Like every time he's given the opportunity, he's just jerking Trump off.
You see Governor Ron DeSantis there, along with his wife. Congressman, let me ask you, as our South Florida resident here, did Senator Tim Scott and former Governor Chris Christie do enough? We know that Tim Scott is banking it all on Iowa. Chris Christie is banking it all on New Hampshire. Did they do enough to stay in the conversation here?
Hallie, I don't think they did enough to break through. I mean, status quo, sure, maybe they can stay in the race a bit longer. Maybe they can even make the next debate, but they're behind. They really need to, make a leap forward. They needed to attack some of these other candidates a bit more, and they didn't really connect. I think that they did adequate performance.
They didn't really connect.
No one had a disastrous performance here. No one disqualified themselves, but I don't think Christie or Scott did enough to make it to that next level.
Mary Catherine Ham, what do you think Republican voters
didn't even get to the next level? So sad.
Obviously fractured. Is it Donald Trump's party? Is it the party of Ronald Reagan? Is it the party of Tucker Carlson? It's unknown right now. But the debate and what was happening in the beginning of the debate, especially with the personal attacks on the RNC and then on the other candidates, who does that motivate to vote for? I'm kind of confused what the strategy was there in the beginning.
Look, it's tricky, right? Going after moderators, I think, always works well for Republican audiences. It's not an unusual tactic. Did it work out well tonight? I don't know. It's fine. I agree that Christie and Scott, not exactly exhilarating tonight. I'm not sure that they should be at the next debate because of that. But here we are, and the fracturing is
okay. But like the next one's the last one, though, right?
I don't know exactly how people are reacting to this, but I talked to some voters over at an Americans for Prosperity event near.
I feel like this was the least exciting of the three so far.
Florida voters, and many of them, and this is something I note every time.
Mostly because of the absence of
women voters
Burgum.
Like Nikki Haley, and that is a thing that people have to reckon with because these suburban, educated women voters are what you have to earn back in order to make the Republican Party successful again.
Super intrigued.
The suburban, educated. Okay. I'm done listening to this. I'm turning off the stream. You guys can go watch some Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl instead. You guys go watch GSM Void. I don't want to listen to Rhonda anymore. It's over. Stream's over. See y'all next time.
Ryan Nobles stationed out for us there in New Hampshire. Hey, Ryan.